Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's very special episode of Queen is Dead, which is about the director never mind where to go with this. The director who, fuck it,
कहाँ जा
never
रहे
mind.
हो?
सोच रहा हूँ.
I
It's
also
10
want to
in the
know कहाँ जा
morning,
रहा है?
guys. It's
Huh?
10 in the morning in
It's 10
India
in the
and it's
morning. Yeah,
showing.
yeah.
But yeah,
Sorry,
It's 10
we're
in the morning.
thinking.
I'm
they
drinking
were
through
up.
2 cups, my second cup of coffee.
These two were up all night watching Robert Eggers films, so they are clearly misplaced or displaced in a
No, no,
different
no.
era.
I slept no because I watched the Northman. So
Slept in
I
a
had a
different
good
era,
night's
now
sleep.
waking up.
Yeah.
Oh, right, right, of course.
No, 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 I'm kidding. I'm not going to include this. But anyways,
जादू मंतर जादू मंतर जादू मंतर You are going into the future.
You talking to me?
Ain't always BBC closing.
என் பேர் மாணிக்கம் எனக்கு இன்னொரு பேர் இருக்கு
Talking to me?
Queen is dead. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's very special episode of Queen is Dead. I think our all we imagine as light episode did quite well, which has inspired us to do more episodes on new filmmakers who we really like and whose work we really like. So, I mean, it's not because of that. I think this is one director whose work I've admired, and I think whoever I'm with today, which is Aryan. Hello, Aryan from America at 10 p.m. No, it's 11 p.m. for you at night and 10 a.m.
It's
for me and
midnight,
Amartya.
so it's
Oh,
right.
it's midnight.
It's
Never
the
mind.
perfect. It's the
Freedom आ
perfect
जाएगा
time to be
midnight पे
talking
सर
about
freedom होगा
About
Robert
Robert
midnight
Eggers.
Eggers. Yes.
freedom होगा
Yeah.
midnight पे सर freedom.
Okay. And as you can hear, we have Amartya also, who is woken up at 10 a.m. just to record this episode. So, I mean, applause is
Second cup of
due.
coffee चल रहा है.
हाँ,
So
applause is due. मेरी चाय खत्म हो गई यहाँ पे. Anyways, we are talking about the filmography minus Nosferatu of Robert Eggers. So basically, we are talking about three of his films, and we'll just briefly mention his short films, which sort of, for me at least, are show reels for a lot of his films. So we'll be talking about his work, and then next week, sort of as a continuation to this episode, and I think we've planned it according to how Nosferatu's release is in India. If it doesn't
if
happen,
it ever does,
if
that's a
it
good
doesn't
thing.
happen, you can blame India.
It
Which,
will, I think,
yeah,
there's like decent fan base for like
hopefully,
not just the fans of horror in
Hopefully,
India, but even Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers. Yeah.
hopefully. हाँ.
So, yeah, I mean, so that episode next week.
जिस देश में पुष्पा 2 इतना पैसा कमाती है उस देश में मेरा कोई भरोसा नहीं है. तो
वाह,
चलो.
यहाँ पे मैं नेशनल एंथम प्ले कर देता हूँ, है ना.
Says the
Uh,
person who just saw the Golden Globes where Wicked won for Best Cinematic and Box Office
सर
Achievement. But
आप तो वैसे
anyways,
भी करप्ट कंट्री में रह रहे हो. So उसका कुछ नहीं
हाँ
हो सकता.
मुझे कुछ कहना ही नहीं है मैंने मतलब क्या ही कह सकते हैं.
Oh yeah, we have for anyone who's we are recording this straight after the Golden Globes have happened. So
Yeah, and
which
whatever
only Aryan has
snark,
we
watched.
could care 2 hours about it, but
whatever
why?
snark comes, like कहीं से भी जो आती है वो it'll be for that. For those awards, which Varun and I think I don't know if Varun's like copying me here. I called it the Stardust Awards of Hollywood, which it is. Like it's just like it's nonsense. Anyways,
सर
no.
स्क्रीन अवार्ड्स स्टारडस्ट भी नहीं है. स्टारडस्ट थोड़ा लेजिटिमेसी था. स्क्रीन अवार्ड्स
So Stardust में कोई legitimacy नहीं था. But anyways, ठीक है. Okay.
रिलेटिवली.
Okay, anyways, away from all that nonsense, we will be talking about Robert Eggers today. And Nosferatu episode, as I was saying, next week will be a full Nosferatu sort of before and what's coming like after. So it's a lot to do with the like talking about the 1922 film by F.W. Murnau, then the Herzog film, and then some other adaptations of Nosferatu in the unpretentious name Nosferatu has is Dracula. So, that some versions of that maybe, but then eventually talking about Robert Eggers'
Nosferatu was the
adaptation.
first fan fiction First ever fan fiction that got legitimacy.
Yeah.
It's true. Look it up. It is the first ever fan fiction.
All this shall be coming next week. I'm not sure who, if Aryan or Amartya will be there for that episode. If they are, then I'll be happy. I know I'm saddled with Varun for sure for that episode. So, best of luck to be. But for this episode, Robert Eggers is our focus. I'll give you a brief intro of him as a person, and then as a filmmaker. He was born in New York City in the summer of 1983. He's lived most of his childhood in Wyoming, though, and especially a small town called Lee near Durham, North Carolina. The reason I'm emphasizing the locations is because a lot of times when we'll talk about his films, his work, the sense of place, the sense of time, place in time is very important. And I think that sort of he mentions I'm going to link a bunch of articles here by a couple of people who have written extensively about him, profiles on him essentially. So one of them, as a New Yorker subscriber, which you can make me say, which makes me whatever you think you want to. I got there is.
That only makes you my quote unquote supplier because I'm going to take your account.
You are
क्योंकि
allowed to
मुझे-
take that. Of course, you can. So basically, Eggers, in an extended piece written on him prior to the release of my favorite film of his, The Northman, in The New Yorker by Sam Knight, describes Lee, the place where he lived, as more
It's
or less
L
like
double E, right? Yeah,
Lee is
L-E-I-T-H.
like the L-double-E. So basically, he says it's more or less like a church, a library, a country store, and a graveyard. I'm exaggerating a little bit to make it sound romantic. So I think the whole idea is that his
अरे मतलब
film,
वो जलपाईगुड़ी पे रहता था, but जो भी हो.
yes. So you will be our next Robert Eggers then, I guess.
मैं फिल्म नहीं बना रहा सर.
Okay,
मुझे
fine.
पता है कितना हार्ड वर्क है. संजीत को भी पता है.
Yeah.
संजीत सुनेगा तो संजीत हार्ट अटैक करेगा अगर सुनेगा मैं फिल्म
He
बना रहा
knows
हूँ.
that another Amartya film critic will just bash his ego.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
why
वो होगा.
No, but I think just to like go more into his sort of, the way he sort of looks at cinema, I think kind of comes naturally from how he's described places. Like
yeah.
in his childhood also, he said that one of the places which had like a huge effect on him was his grandfather's post-retirement 18th century farmhouse, which was near Lee, and it was filled with like curiosities. This all I'm taking from the New Yorker, so
I think it also
quotations
explains his
incoming.
fascination with all these classics and mythologies.
Yeah.
आप
So
small
the
town में आप
curiosities
small
that
town में हो थोड़ा time to
no,
spend
and
करना
he's
पड़ेगा
always
ना.
been fascinated by historical, folk
Yeah,
tales and all
exactly.
this stuff also. But then he says that, that his grandfather's farmhouse was filled with curiosities like taxidermy, model ships, African mask, Civil War artifacts, lassos, and spurs from the Old West. It was super, quote unquote, it was super magical, Eggers said. And he loved, costumes and performances of all kinds. He found the woods haunted and old, like in a charming sort of way. So that sort of leads indirectly into his films. And he's a self-ascribed pretentious guy. Like I think he says that he loved comics in the beginning, but when I guess was about 10, he was introduced to two books of woodcuts by Albrecht Dürer and Martin. And I'm going to butcher so many names in this, you have no idea.
Albrecht Dürer is the
Uh,
painter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And Martin Schongauer, someone 15th century
Hmm.
German printmakers. So he said that is when I almost literally, but certainly metaphorically, put away my comic books and became a snob and a dilettante. That's
Are
Eggers.
those expressionistic artists?
Huh, like it's just
Yeah,
more,
yeah.
it's like Grimm's fairy tale, sort of the sea creatures and the wild men
It's-
and beasts did kind of.
It's like It's like those inspirations which gave right. It's like Hans Christian Andersen,
Yeah.
Aesop Fables, all are kind of sort of linked to this.
Edgar Allan Poe and all these people also come into
Yeah.
play
All these
later
people.
on. So, like that sort of
I
literature.
like these snobs. See, I like these snobbish people who admit that they are snobs,
Hmm.
who acknowledge that they are snobs.
Mhm.
ये चलो ठीक है, self awareness है.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's very much him being into this sort of other world, which I guess he brings to the movies that he makes. And so it's interesting that, he's worked as a production designer first. You can kind of see how well his films are sort of, in the way they emphasize authenticity also. Costumes, he's worked with that. He's made a stage scene by scene remake of 1922's Nosferatu, like a stage adapt, like essentially that. So, I'm curious to see how that
Nice.
transfers to Nosferatu, the movie, which Aryan has seen. So, we'll end this episode on him giving some thoughts on that. But non-spoilery thoughts, I mean, which weirdly enough, Hemant was giving full spoilery thoughts to us yesterday on chat. But anyways,
So
um,
technically speaking, Nosferatu the movie is at this point more than 100 years old.
no,
उसका
no,
भी अगर
no, to the
spoiler
new
करे,
one, whatever tweaks he's made, I don't want to know, no?
अरे सर क्या और tweaks करेगा
Okay,
actual movie से?
spoiler warning, there are
No
not a lot of
tweaks?
tweaks.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
That's
which
sad.
tweaks
is
क्या
where some
करेगा
of
सर?
my
100-year-old
yeah,
movie है, क्या tweak करेगा?
That
very
is the
traditionalistic, which is
reason क्या है फिर remake करने का?
exactly Dhruv. Let's discuss Nosferatu later on.
Okay, fine.
But yeah,
I
Uh,
think we have hit the nail in the
exactly.
head regarding Aryan ka
I'm
viewpoint.
Yes,
sad.
yes,
Anyways,
yeah.
so his cinematic inspirations, I'll also briefly delve into that. He's, whenever he is quoted, he said he worships Ingmar Bergman, which you can see in some of his
I
films.
think we can see that, yeah.
And then I
Especially in
think,
The Witch.
especially in The Witch, and I think he's a big fan of Carl Theodor Dreyer also, who's one
Which
of
you
the
can see
great
also. The
silent
Passion of
filmmakers
Joan of the
also.
Arc का कुछ frames तो है
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even others. I've not seen more. Vampire, the
Vampire, oh yeah.
1932
Vampire
film.
is, yeah.
Which, by the way, I have seen.
Even I've
That
seen. I've
movie is quite tough to go through. But
Yes, but it's a fair. So this brings me directly to his short film, which is the first short film he made, which is excruciating. It is genuinely like, one of those. He said that he's a snob, right? This is like the totally pretentious art house, art
nobody.
student film that someone makes. And the reason I mentioned Vampire is because it literally takes the aesthetic of Vampire and, slaps it upon Hansel and Gretel's
So
tail.
it's that very grainy. So it's a very grainy, very foggy aesthetic. Yeah, full all
It's like
black
a
and white.
first person, thingy almost also, where it's like,
Oh
following
boy.
someone and I'm just like, great concept for like 4 minutes. It's 26 minutes long though, and the 26 minutes feel like 1 hour. It's not nice. And it's got this, and this we'll get to later also, but he's got this, despite being having such a rich history in production design, costume design, and, everything, I'm surprised by how much he relies on music, to, do ominous
I think
atmospherics, which
sound
is
design more or
A24.
less, right?
No,
He
there's a
relies a
lot
lot
of
on.
music in a lot of his
Yeah.
films, I think. But in any case, in Hansel and Gretel, it's like to a degree where I was just like, I had to put the film on silent, and I was like, I'm not listening to this because I would rather just watch the images play out. The images also aren't, I think, that great. Like there are flashes of what you see later on, but I think it's very much one of those annoying homages to stuff. Anyways, his other two short films are pretty good, and they sort of set up what you'll see later on. So the first one is The Telltale Heart, which he made in
Mm.
2008, which automatically
This
leads
is the Poe
into.
story, right?
This is the Edgar Allan
Yeah,
Poe.
yeah, Poe
Yes, yeah,
story.
yeah,
Yeah.
which sort of directly leads into Lighthouse. Telltale Heart
Yeah.
literally is in many ways Lighthouse, mini Lighthouse essentially. And
I mean, to
Brothers
be fair, the original Lighthouse thingy, that was also a short story which Poe
from
couldn't,
Poe.
which,
Yeah.
yeah, which he could not complete. He passed away
Yes.
before he could make anything out of the story.
Yeah.
And yeah, many people tried to complete it with their own interpretations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And then there's Brothers 2013, which sort of kind of gives, which which also has like a lighthouse-ish sort of theme to it, but the setting is very much like we've almost arrived in the witch's world. Like the woods and the creeks and the way he's shooting them are directly sort of linked to the witch, which also brings me to maybe the witch, but I was about to say it's a great transition to the witch, but I will not. I will firstly ask both Aryan and Amartya their sort of, briefish thoughts on Robert Eggers as a filmmaker and what they think of him and what does he bring to this landscape of films, I suppose, or like cinema. Go ahead, guys. Whoever's more awake can chip in.
I had 2 cups of coffee. I think I'm more awake now at
Okay.
this point.
Go
I
ahead.
don't sound like it, but I think I'm more awake.
That's okay.
Plus,
That's okay.
also the fact that Aryan is kind of sick, so I'm giving him
Yes.
thoda rest.
Yeah.
आप rest करो थोड़ा, कोई issue नहीं है. But the trio of modern horror at one point of time used to be Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, and Robert Eggers.
Once upon a time, excuse me.
Once upon a time, before Ari Aster lost his goddamn mind.
Oh,
But
okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
He's
once
afraid.
upon a yeah, he's very afraid.
The
Yeah.
trio of folk horror in
Trio of folk
particular, I
horror
think,
in
right?
general.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Robert Eggers, surprisingly, my introduction to Robert Eggers was The Lighthouse. I saw The Witch very recently. I did
Same,
not
yeah.
see The Witch when it came out.
Okay.
So when I saw The Lighthouse, I think Robert Eggers was the first time I felt that watching quote-unquote pretentious art house horror was actually cool. I was full A24 pilled, as the kids say.
Yeah.
ठीक है, because when I saw The Lighthouse, I think I was blown away.
Yeah.
I was blown away because I couldn't fathom, this is 2019, I couldn't fathom that somebody could make something so quote-unquote esoteric within a very traditional and very recognizable horror substrate.
Yeah.
With recognizable actors as well.
Yeah, exactly.
High
Yeah.
profile even, you would
Very
say,
high
right?
profile actors, yeah.
Because The
And
Witch
to-
doesn't have high profile actors, especially at that point in time. They
Yeah,
are
and to
fairly
use
character
these
actors.
quote-unquote high-profile actors to essentially create what is a Three Stooges kind of a comedy, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can see Lighthouse,
Yeah.
whatever you want, I think.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Which also becomes a thing where immediately after 2019 the pandemic comes, and from that point of view The Lighthouse gains even more precedence
Yeah.
as a movie. But again, that was the time when I felt that, like Robert Eggers is a filmmaker you should keep an eye on. It's
Yeah.
like Jordan Peele comes out with Get Out, Ari Aster Hereditary, and then Robert Eggers Lighthouse.
That's
So I was
the
like,
origin of sort of the, what is
new
it?
wave horror.
Can you call these elevated horrors? I don't think they're elevated.
I
They
think-
have
I think The
been
Witch is
called
definitely-
so for like
I-
2-3 years, but
Yeah.
now the term has become so
Art
redundant that
horror,
it's
no?
kind of
No, I think The Witch can be, I'm going to use the word blamed. I think The Witch can be sufficiently blamed for introducing art house horror,
Yeah.
or elevated horror, because
yeah.
The Witch has everything. The Witch introduced everything which other filmmakers took, and they were like, oh, I'm going to make horror more elevated.
Yeah.
They don't, because they don't understand what Eggers is trying to do.
Yeah.
So they fail miserably at it. Like, if you watch this and then you watch Oz Perkins's Hansel and Gretel, you would be like, wow.
I mean, Oz Perkins, I love the film's atmosphere. Oz Perkins' films also, but it is
like,
otherwise
it's heavily inspired.
Yeah,
It's heavily inspired.
Yeah.
Then you had another of those A24 movies, I don't exactly remember, in which Joel Edgerton plays a guy who
Oh,
is
I love
running
that
in the
movie,
forest.
but yes, it comes at
What
night.
is the name of that? It Comes at Night. Yeah. Which got a lot of controversy because people
Yes.
were like, wait, how is it horror?
Yeah.
Fine. But yeah, the basic conceit is still the same. Elevated horror, because you are putting in more art house esoteric sensibilities into a
Abstract
genre
imagery.
into a genre which was always supposed to be a social a message heavy or something more than simple visceral thrills. Horror was always supposed to be that.
Yeah,
So it's
I mean,
like
especially
this is just
since
making it more
the-
apparent.
Especially since the 70s and 80s, right? Like after the sort of, I think Texas Chainsaw and all that. Like that stuff has more to it than it seems on the surface. Like, on surface it feels like it's genre thrills. But
Hmm.
but then if you look at it from the point of view of when it's made and what it's sort of talking about, especially body horror comes after Cronenberg and all that is much more
Cronenberg, yeah.
overtly even political at times. But
I do
I
think
think
it's also the fact that like all this started from 2015 to 2016. If people remember correctly, that is also the
no,
time
The
when
Witch
social
was a
media,
phenomena like when it
which
came
was a
out.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
It was also that time in which social media became the rage. It started
Mm.
as being the rage.
The rage
So
that
it's
has
like
took over us.
rage that
And
has took
not
over
just
everything.
not just while
Hmm.
talking about like A24 and all these indie
Hmm.
studios over here, like even in India, it gave us, like, even if years later, it gave us Tumbar, it gave us even
Hmm.
in 24 Brahma Yugam.
Yeah,
Brahma
yeah.
So
Yugam,
it's
yeah.
like,
No, but it's
yeah,
also like
it started a
yeah,
Hmm.
but it's also I'm bringing up the social media because all these elevated, quote unquote, elevated horrors are terms, right?
Hmm.
Because
yeah,
every generation has their own methodology of naming of a movement.
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Which if you read more into it, which if you read each and every one of these definitions,
Hmm.
they are essentially recycling some of the ethos that came like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and that's not a criticism. That's how
Hmm.
film movements actually work.
Yeah.
So it's like even elevated horror is essentially taking in ethos of John Carpenter or David Cronenberg and then
Yeah.
introducing Greek mythology or abstract imagery or whatever,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
it's taking a lot
putting
of
it.
stuff. Like, again, it's the
It's
people, these people watched a lot of the movies which inspired them, right? It's one of those things also. Unless,
exactly,
of
yeah.
course, there's some filmmaker who comes, I'm sure there is, who's like, oh, I didn't watch any movies, like just
But
whatever.
I
Then I
also
don't know.
think like a big part of distinction over here, as you guys are talking about, between someone like Robert Eggers and people who are trying to emulate the same
Hmm.
kind of style, is that Robert Eggers has said this multiple times throughout all his interviews
Hmm.
over the past 5 to 7, 8 years now,
Hmm.
that he never tries to like start a script. He never reverse engineers a script through a particular theme or themes,
Hmm. Hmm.
which has kind of dwindled as his films have went on,
Hmm.
especially with the Northman and Nosferatu, the remake.
Hmm.
But I think that's essentially what makes his films distinct, because
Hmm.
that's what allows them to be so clear about a sense of space and time.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And
I mean,
all
they
the
you
other
think
readings are
the
They feel
secondary.
space
very
and
much
time
like a
defines
living
what
develop.
wherever they go,
Yeah, yeah.
sort of
The
like that.
best,
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
his best stuff,
Hmm.
which includes The Witch and to an
Hmm.
extent The Lighthouse,
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
all feel like a living, breathing chimera,
Hmm.
Yeah.
a mixture of so many themes and things
Hmm.
that it could only be made by somebody who grew up
Yeah.
reading
And
all these quote unquote stuff and
without the winking sensibility, though.
without
Like
the
he,
winking
Exactly.
sensibility,
yeah.
Yeah.
like this is a guy who grew up with this stuff, and that is why his entire sensibility comes out like
Hmm.
that, and
Yeah.
he's not being so facetious about it.
Yeah.
He's like,
Exactly. Like what
yeah,
what Nolan used to say in all
Hmm.
his interviews when Tenet came out
Hmm.
is that don't try to understand it, feel it. I think
Hmm.
that like applies the most and more, definitely
Hmm.
more to Robert
tenet
Eggers'
counter
first two.
ting, but take it.
Isme I didn't expect, but yes. Nini,
Yeah,
but
No, but still it
see,
is like his
it's
films, like The
yeah, it is
Lighthouse.
of course like that. Yeah,
Lighthouse
It
most
is,
though, I
I feel
feel,
them
right?
rather. Yeah.
Lighthouse definitely. Lighthouse felt
Lighthouse is
like
like one of those experiment. It's like a proper arty horror film, like art. Like I think The Witch
it's
has.
so arty horror that you can't even like pigeonhole it in a genre.
You can't, and I think
But
that's the
but it
work
is
that.
so contained in
Yeah.
its atmosphere and in its
Yeah.
in the two lead performances, that it won't even allow you to assume that it's being pretentious at any point, because it's clearly saying that screw whatever you want to think of what I'm doing, but this
Yeah.
is it. Like,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
into this world, be completely
Yeah.
enveloped into this world I'm
Ah,
creating
and
for 140 minutes or whatever, 110 minutes or whatever. And
119,
it's like all the
109
readings are
minutes.
secondary.
Huh.
Every reading, that film has been like shredded down to pieces in trying to people trying to read
I
and
mean, it's
decode its
various
meaning and whatever.
interpretations and everything and
Yeah,
all that. Yeah.
but it
Yes.
it doesn't matter. That's all.
Yeah. And I mean, I am generally a fan, especially since I hated on Jigra recently.
Hmm.
I'm especially a fan of films which are sort of take themselves very self seriously also sometimes. So I'm not really opposed to that, because I know one of the criticisms leveled at Eggers often is that he's too much into this almost academic historicism. Yeah, like it's like, and I think you kind of Aryan mentioned it, that there is like the reliance on remaking Nosferatu, which we will get
I
to
think the
next week.
criticism also comes, and this is again joining and piggybacking of my entire thesis of the lack of brain cells within a certain section of the populace. But
But we are
अभी
back to
तो
that.
मतलब अभी तो मतलब क्लासिक्स के ऊपर तो किसी का तो कोई इंटरेस्ट है नहीं.
Hmm.
ओल्ड हॉलीवुड में किसी का कोई इंटरेस्ट है नहीं.
Hmm.
So it's like आधा से ज़्यादा criticism comes from these young guys who have no curiosity or no interest in take reading over any of this stuff. Older critics, on the other hand, rightly criticize at times that Eggers is too much in love and sometimes luxuriates over those, which
Yeah.
I can buy.
Hmm.
I can buy. At times I can buy. Like Lighthouse में भी वो दिख रहा है.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's again, I would rather take like the whole filmmaker
Yeah,
committing to
that is also my
wholehearted
point. Yeah,
authenticity
yeah.
than,
Considering what we get, considering
mm,
what we quote unquote get as
mm.
elevated horror or tentpole movies nowadays, उसके हिसाब से I can take this.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
I'm
Of
like,
still
course, definitely.
and I think half the job for me at least, and I think he's also right, is half the, like Eggers has said this, half the job is done if you get all this stuff right in terms of atmosphere at least. And I think that's one
Yeah.
of the things which is the strongest suit of his films, like regardless of how much one of us hates one film, one of us likes one film. Like, it's like one of those things. He's good. He's very good at creating a sense of place. He's very good. He's very accomplished at that. He knows how to transport you to his world, whatever that world he is recreating or creating. I think that's a big thing. I think that's that's his. And I think one of the reasons why we are talking about him is because I think, because we have varying things to say about his films. It's not like we are unanimously positive on all of them. We have some films which we really like, some of them, well, some of us hate. Let's just say that. But I think one of the strong suits of him is that he can, at this point in time where everything is like ironic and like, wink wink, look at what I'm doing, my look at my references, look at my quotation
Meta
marks.
modern.
no,
Yes.
but even more than meta modern, it's like at this point, it's like you will look at some filmmakers and you will like, have you forgotten how to shoot a movie?
I mean, you won't
Yeah.
get it with him, right? So
Yeah, you are never
yeah,
going to get that with him.
yeah.
Like up now, the situation is so dire that filmmakers. I sometimes think that filmmakers don't even have some of the basic criteria of how to actually frame a shot.
Yeah.
Wicked, I'm looking at you. So it's like, yeah, how to frame a shot
फिर
or
क्यों
how to
क्यों
get lighting right. No, because it is true. If you
Okay.
look at any Eggers movie,
Hmm.
that is never going to be the issue.
Yeah, I mean,
You,
to be just, I guess we are doing a like sort of a summation of his sort of style also here, and then we'll directly lead into the witch. But I guess it's important to mention Jaron Blaschke, I think it's Blaschke only,
hmm,
the cinematographer for all of his films.
yes,
So who has a major hand, I think, in sort of creating his world. So I
creating
mean,
his style. Yeah.
and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
all if you see any, I know what you're saying, Amartya, but I think it's also to do with his films don't feel like modern films. Partly that's
Exactly. He's like
they are all set in sort of period settings and everything. So fine, you use a sort of more, but his films genuinely feel like artifacts. Classical artifacts which you've discovered in some ways. But I'm
Hmm.
talking especially about Witch and
Which
Lighthouse.
instantly makes the experience of watching any of his new films, regardless of how mediocre it might turn out to be, in case
Hmm.
of his latter two films, a special experience because there is no one in the industry, in any of the industries, who's functioning on the same wavelength.
At least modern
His film,
filmmakers. At
Yeah.
least modern
yeah.
filmmakers. Let's
No,
be
no, I
very
mean
clear on
that's
that.
what I think one of the
Yeah.
things I also said, that he can very much make a silent film. That his aesthetic matches the silent era stuff the most sometimes. I mean, he's remaking a film which is from the silent era in
Yeah.
Nosferatu, right? So,
Hmm.
Lighthouse, I think even like we'll discuss this more in depth, but the performances, the way people, act in that.
Lighthouse is very much like, the Wings era level, 1927 Wings, all those movies where theatricality was the norm. If you
Yeah,
weren't theatrical, your emotions won't stand out.
yeah,
Because that's the entire conceit of a silent film anyway.
yeah.
Everything needs to be heightened. That was the
Performance, especially because there's no
performance. Yeah.
sound, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I think that, like, his position in cinema now, I think, is very much he's almost like a historian, like, in many ways. Like, he's like just like his films can very much function as, like, of course, time capsules to those eras where, of course, none of us were alive. Even Amartya, as
Varun would
Varun
like to
would say,
joke.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, but no, I think that time capsules show, but also just from a filmmaking point of view, like, even though I have varying thoughts on, Lighthouse, there's some shots, and I was just like, it's so bloody immaculate how well it's shot, and how
Yeah.
how it's framed. Like, it's just like, I'm like, who takes this much time nowadays to pay attention
Exactly,
to
na.
framing and
Exactly, na.
shot image making, right? I mean, just like, this is
Yeah.
like extraordinary in terms of image making.
You
So I think
remember
that's
you remember one of my criticisms of Sujay Ghosh's great movie, Janeja. So when I was talking about, say, Suspect X, the original movie which Janeja took liberally from, you remember one of my criticism was this
I
character
don't
is
remember
standing at
Amartya,
one
but please remind me.
this character is standing at one end of this bridge and the other character is standing at the other end, and there is a wide master shot, and this character
Yes.
is supposed to go from one end to the another in a way, so she is basically connecting his emotional turmoil. I am like, oh my god, filmmaking
Huh.
in 2008.
Are you praising Jane Jan, or are you praising
No,
Suspect
I'm
X?
praising Suspect X. I'm like, oh my
Okay,
god,
okay.
filmmaking. People have
Yes.
forgotten how to do that nowadays. this
Yeah,
is this is kind of like that.
sure.
It's like very simple things. It's like basic framing of a shot. Like, there is a scene in Lighthouse in which, like, Pattinson's character finds essentially a version of himself, essentially dying,
Hmm.
like, and then Willem Dafoe's character is going to kill him, and he stabs Willem Dafoe's character, and his
Hmm.
face opens, and the light comes out, and
Hmm.
that entire thing is framed like a painting.
Yeah.
It is
It is
inspired from a
probably
painting,
taken
right?
from a painting,
It
like,
is
from
probably
Yeah,
taken
yeah.
from, I think, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I saw
Because
some posts back when it came out, like some shots versus the paintings that
yeah.
inspired it.
So even if you
Might
do
be.
that,
Hmm.
nowadays तो people will think, oh, okay, अच्छा, ठीक है. That is the most reaction they will
Yeah,
ever do.
Hmm.
उससे ज़्यादा नहीं
exactly.
जाएंगे. Yeah, but it's like the amount of effort it must take to do something like this,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
to actually execute it well enough that it feels seamless within the
In the context of the
idiosyncrasy,
film. Yeah.
idiosyncrasy of the film overall.
Hmm.
That takes work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which
Even if
sort
I
of.
hate Ari Aster's movies, at least his last movie, I couldn't
Hmm.
stand that movie.
Hmm.
I will admit to the fact that his idiosyncrasy gave rise to a very specific brand of filmmaking, which not a lot
Yeah.
of people does.
Yeah.
It's a different thing that it is
It's
obnoxious
the
as hell.
unique voice thing only, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's like they
Yeah.
are unique voices. If you like the voice or not, I think that's a separate
It's a
matter.
different thing that it's obnoxious as hell, Ari Aster's, but
I mean,
it's
Bo is
unique.
afraid for you. Like, I'm generally not a Ari Aster person, but, like, you guys really like Midsommar. You guys really like. I mean, Hereditary, I like three-fourths a lot. And
Hereditary
then,
is great.
yeah. So, anyways, we will move on to The Witch, though, now, I think.
Yes.
The Witch, or the Vvitch, as I should call it, because correctly it is titled Vvitch.
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. For what? For the kingdom of God. Let us pray.
Subtitled A New England Folk Tale. which sort of puts you in the frame of, I think, both of his films, which I think are most accomplished, are set in New England only. Sort
Yeah.
of, it harkens back to probably the literature he read, and sort of, the thing he's most invested in. I think supposedly sort of goes back to this era. Of course, he's probably more interested in other things also, which he's made, but these things in The Witch, especially sort of when he describes his childhood and like the woods and everything, I think this very much sort of lends itself rather naturally to it. It's written and directed by him. It's, as I said, shot by Jaron Blaschke, edited by Louis Ford, composed music by Mark Corwin, stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickey, and the child actor who I should name Harvey Scrimshaw, who plays the brother, or like Anya Taylor-Joy's brother in the film. But yes, the plot, as I have written it, of The Witcher, and whoever is not aware, and we will be discussing it full in spoilers and everything. So please watch it before, or if you're not interested in watching it, then do continue to listen to us.
I mean, if you want to watch it, it's still available on Netflix. It'll be leaving very soon. So if you
Okay.
want to watch it, please.
Yes, this is for Indians. It
Yes,
wasn't
this for
available on
Indians.
Netflix here, so in Dubai. So,
Yes.
anyways, the plot is a prideful, and this is my plot. I'm not crediting IMDb and Letterboxd this time, so you can blame whatever you want towards me. A prideful and staunchly religious patriarch gets himself and his family banished from a perfectly fine, if not radically devout New England village to fend for themselves in the woods. A combination of God's silence, aka Ingmar Bergman, torrid weather conditions, poor corn harvest, witchy witches, and demonic goats slowly turn the family members against each other. What are your thoughts on The Witch, guys? I'll begin with both of you because I think you watched it after
Fairly
watching
recently.
Lighthouse and everything, right? So, and I've watched it whenever. That's one of the few films, my introduction into being a cinephile, I think, because 2015 is the time I was in engineering
Hmm.
school and I was miserable. So I watched The Witch then. So I remember it very
Goddamn,
clearly.
10 years ago, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, go ahead. Amartya.
Yeah, so
Oh, Aryan, sorry.
I watched it. I watched The Lighthouse like when it came out,
Hmm.
and I think I watched it like 4 or 5 times in 2019.
Hmm.
I watched it alone, like just by myself only a couple of times,
Hmm.
but it was the kind of film I knew he was the kind of filmmaker. If you have your friends over, then you would appreciate the film even more while seeing them react to those
Hmm.
idiosyncrasies and
Hmm.
those absurd swings that he
Hmm.
usually takes. So The Lighthouse, I watched it. I don't think I've rewatched it since
Hmm.
2019, but I have I have like vivid memories from those experiences.
Hmm.
But because of that reason, for the longest time, I was deliberately sitting on his first feature, which
Hmm.
is the which we're talking about, up until very recently. I watched the film this Halloween in 24
Oh,
with my
nice.
dad,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it was, oh my God,
Hmm.
like I watched it not the great sound, not the
Hmm.
way I would intend normally
You
to
watched it with
watch,
subtitles,
especially
though,
on the.
right?
Oh yes, of
Yes,
course.
which is a very important note,
Which is
actually.
very important, yes.
Yeah,
I think all of
exactly.
his
But
films
I
need to be
was.
watched with
Though, to
subtitles.
be fair, I don't know what it. I think it is because he establishes the atmosphere so well, but
Hmm.
Mhm.
the entire usage of this quote unquote ye old day English,
Hmm.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel jarring.
In
it
this, it
never feels
doesn't,
that.
I
Like
think.
in five,
Neither
ten
in
minutes, you
Lighthouse,
are.
I think.
Neither in Lighthouse it feels
Yeah.
jarring. So it's like if you can establish the atmosphere really well,
Hmm.
all these other idiosyncrasies, which kinda also works very well as historical fidelity, like
Authenticity, no? Yeah. It's
yeah,
like, yeah.
it stands out. It feels like lived in a way.
It
Anyway,
doesn't
Aryan,
feel
continue.
But unlike
House of
I
Gucci.
was blown away by The Witch
Yes.
even more because I know Robert Eggers doesn't. He continuously says, as I spoke earlier, as I mentioned earlier, that he doesn't make his films with like a certain catalog of themes that he wants to incorporate.
Hmm.
But I was blown away of how thematic the film was because I was
Yep.
expecting it to be more of a plotless vibes only folk horror.
Yeah.
And seeing it now in 2024, which I did, you kind of see how it might end, because also it's
Hmm.
called The Witch, okay, and you've seen the
Yeah, I think
evolution
that's
of the
one of the
folk.
few things we'll talk about. Get that
Yeah,
the film very clearly establishes at the beginning that there is a witch. So I
exactly,
think
exactly.
that's one of the
And yet
few
it
It
never,
points.
establishes pretty graphically.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, even if it's predictable, I was like just shook away by the sheer
Yeah.
viscerality, not in terms of the graphics, but in terms of how it channeled through that ending. And
Mm.
I was blown away by how clearly it had something to say.
Yeah.
And of course, we can all argue,
I think there's
Eggers
a lot of
himself can argue
interpretations
whether,
in how you can see the movie though still. Like that it's
for
open
me,
to a
it was
lot.
like, unlike, I mean, of course, I was comparing it with the Lighthouse at the time, but relatively speaking, it's not that
Relatively
open to
speaking, definitely
interpretation.
not. And I think that is
Yeah,
one of the reasons why I like it also more. I think
exactly.
for me it's
So I
that,
do think I
Mm,
love it enough for
mm,
me to not have the dexterity to rewatch the Lighthouse now, because
mm,
I do think I do see myself loving the witch even more than the Lighthouse,
mm,
which I think is a perfect film.
mhm.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
love the witch.
Amartya, you just watched it recently, and I
I
was like,
just
oh
watched it
wow,
recently.
Amartya liked the film as much as I did. So yes,
Why is that surprising to
because I think we
you of all
deviate.
people?
No, because we deviate in this type of horror film sometimes. I mean, I saw the TV
Yes,
Glow.
You
You guys,
both
both of you
like
guys
the
hate.
Green Knight. Come
Yeah,
on.
we
but
both
David
like.
Lowry is a different. I mean, we'll
Oh,
talk
the
about
Green
him
Knight. Yeah,
also. We'll talk
yeah,
about
yeah. We
him,
Yeah.
need to talk
especially
about him.
in
But
the
yeah, yeah,
Northman. Yeah, I think that's a good
yeah.
discussion to be. Anyways, the witch.
No, I think the witch more likely. mm, I'm bringing in a filmmaker who Dhruv doesn't like. This is Eggers at his most Ridley Scott self. He's
I'm,
not
sco-
affected by.
um,
He's not affected by
I'm
anything. He's not
okay.
affected by anything.
Okay. I did
This
By
just
is
even the millennials and Gen
make a
Zs.
annoyed slash disgusted
yeah.
face. But
This,
yes,
he's not affected by anything. This is his alien. This
Hmm.
is his masterpiece in a way.
Yeah.
this is yeah. I mean, but I think there's a bit. I would say that then you could compare him to, I know, blasphemous. I know, Kubrick.
No,
Hmm.
because Kubrick's first film was a travesty.
No, The Shining.
So Joby or Shining came a lot later, right?
Oh, you're
Like
saying in terms of first films. Okay.
yeah,
First
yeah,
films,
first
yeah.
film या
Okay,
second
okay.
film. Like initial films के हिसाब से, this is
Sure.
more Scott in that
Okay.
like his production design is everything has a specific point. It's like
Mm.
his vision is exactingly clear what he's
Mm.
trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Something which will become more muddier and muddier in case of old man Scott.
Mm.
एगर्स का उतना एज नहीं हुआ है इसलिए अभी भी उतना मडी नहीं हो रहा है लेकिन हो जाएगा बट इट्स लाइक दिस इज द वन टाइम वेयर यू कैन सी सम ऑफ द प्योरिटी द डिस्टिलेशन ऑफ
Hmm.
दैट प्योरिटी बिकॉज इट्स वेरी मच dependent on his shot in which he explores the idea of his entire New England, staying in New England, staying in
Mm.
that world, and taking all of that inspiration, all of the different classical literature
Yeah.
thingies that he had consumed and imbibed into his own pretentious self, and then
Mm.
somehow making a soup that feels both in terms of storytelling it feels like it follows the tropes of a folk tale,
Yeah.
but it also becomes a tale about a puritanical society and people escaping from the puritanical society but
About
not
the
escaping
lens
from their own
people,
sin.
about the
Yeah,
lens people would go to in order to break free from isolation and
yeah,
find a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's not even that. It is that, but it's
Mm.
also
Hmm.
like they belong to a very puritanical society to the extent that they
Exactly,
were
yeah.
repressed, but
Yeah.
when they broke away from it they could not break away from the own you know mindset and the mindset of that society because
Yeah.
even as they broke away they were still exercising that, so it's like
No, but they
it's
broke away because the society was not practicing it in their pure, quote unquote,
in the purest, so
pure
it's
way.
like
Yeah.
they're more radical versions of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
radical versions of that quote unquote
They,
society.
I don't know. I think the guy is, and then everyone else, I think he's sort of like a god figure for them
Oh
also.
yes,
Sir,
Patriarchy.
so a lot of
it's the 19th, it's the 14th century patriarchy, it's the 16th century
16th,
patriarchy thingy, na?
17th. Yeah.
17th century
Yeah.
patriarchy thingy, na? Like patriarchs were supposed to be like the conduits to God in a way.
Yes.
And
And
so,
I also think a part of the reason behind the where the success of these films, even financially, like box office wise,
Yeah,
stems
this did
from is
well. Yeah.
how it feels contemporary in a
Oh yeah.
way, the only way I think in terms of its themes, because I think this is Nosferatu definitely has a different reading since it
Hmm.
came after the pandemic now. But I think all his films can be looked as like post-pandemic films or
Mm-hmm.
stories because they all are so claustrophobic
Hmm.
and they all have a feeling of being around this insufferable person or family in this case,
Yeah.
which is so it feels contemporary because
and
we've all
it's
been
also
through
like,
that.
it's a storytelling thing also, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
classical storytelling would ensure that you are adapting a literature and you are adapting it more or less to suit a style that is quote unquote against the grain. If you look at
Hmm.
any of the
Mm,
60s epics or myths,
Hmm.
it's more or
mm,
less like we are striving for entertainment to ensure that the people who are coming to the theater are not, are distracted from the world around them.
Hmm.
mm,
Contemporary storytelling doesn't only want to give you entertainment. Contemporary storytelling also wants to highlight
Hmm.
instances or events that would happen to the human experience.
Hmm.
As
mm,
much as it is about escaping from the yokes of a puritanical society, it is also about sexual freedom and sexual liberation. And
mm,
you can call what happens in the witch, like, it can be highlighted as sexual repression in a way.
Yeah.
And
mm.
the witch in turn represents one thing, it represents Satan in a way, because that's
Hmm.
what they are
Mm,
doing. It's like,
Hmm.
it's basically taking the story of the Bible in a way, it
Hmm.
represents Satan.
mm.
But for Anya Taylor Joy's character, for Kate Dickitt's character, it also represents a form of sexual liberation for them.
Hmm.
And it's
Mm.
like, it reminded me somewhat of Black Narcissus, PNPs.
Paul and
PNP's
Pressburger.
Black,
Yeah.
Paul and
Yeah.
Pressburger's
Mhm.
Black Narcissus,
Yeah. Yeah.
which also dealt very much with
Hmm. Repression.
sexual.
That's very much there. That's bursting with sexual repression. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
bursting with that, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I also like how modern filmmakers try to, like, not demystify these folk tales,
Hmm.
but like recontextualize these folk tales in the perspective of modern sensibilities.
Yeah, but it's not distractingly done in which at
It's
all.
not distractingly done in
Hmm.
this, like
Yeah.
there is
It
a
still
purpose here,
feels
but it's
like a old, and I think there is a way in which you can still read it as not a modern sort of reinterpretation. And
hmm.
you see again, so my thing is, I love the movie. I've told you guys multiple times, and I've been annoying about the witch, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just to do with. Because I watched I rewatched all of his work for this episode, right? So when I rewatched it, I was like, there's so many ways or like so many things going on here in terms of like the dynamics between characters, between like the family members, and what that sort of says in terms of how a sort of puritanical household uh, suppresses and represses a lot of desires and sort of it's almost like living in confinement all the time,
Yes,
living in fear all the time. I think the fear is one of the bigger things, like
I think confinement also ensures that
Hmm.
even if modernity is encroaching, you won't feel modernity encroaching until very late.
Yeah.
So it's like even the witch could be represented as a harbinger of modernity slowly
Mhm.
and steadily creeping in.
Yeah.
But again, at its core, it's almost like a scare movie. It's
Hmm.
like those movies that people would tell, like even in India, people
Hmm.
would tell the stories of "So ja nahi to gabbar aa jayega." It's kind of like this that would
Yeah.
happen, say, the 17th century. It's like stay within the quarters, otherwise, the
Hmm.
horrors which lurk outside. Witches
Yeah.
will eat you.
Hmm.
Witches will take your babies, and it's
Yeah.
like you are taking each and every one of those scares and you are just amplifying them,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
you're also showing why those scares actually exist,
Hmm.
why those scares are existing in a way.
Yeah.
It's because at one point you can say that this is a world which exists, it exists in the membrane of reality and myth in a way,
Yeah.
a very thin membrane, which is also possible, I believe, due to many of these movies, if you see, I
Hmm.
think it's also possible because the world wasn't as explored back then.
Yeah.
So stories acquired a potency of its own because they
Yeah.
felt more real.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think but I think Eggers has mentioned, I was reading a bunch of things where he said that, of course, he draws upon a lot of the closing credits actually of the film. The film was inspired by many folk tales, fairy tales, and written accounts of historical witchcraft, including journals,
Yeah,
diaries,
that's
and court records, right? Much of the dialogue comes directly from these period sources. And one of the things he said was that how much the period sources and the journals mapped out directly onto like the folk tales. So it's just this whole thing where there's almost no discrepancy between reality and folk.
the
Here,
dark ages
oh
itself,
yeah,
like the dark ages itself, like many medieval
Hmm.
movies or medieval horror. Listen, the dark ages were a bad time. Let's be very clear. आप
Hmm.
एक्सकैलिबर देखोगे आपको लगेगा कि ओ माय गॉड सो रोमांटिक इट्स horrifying, it's brutal.
Yeah.
That era was very brutal.
Hmm.
And human beings were so scared that कुछ भी हो they would be like, you know, खाना नहीं मिल रहा है, animal sacrifice. Plague आ रहा है, human sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's like these people weren't exactly like, we are curious, let's just see what these herbs can do. नहीं,
Yeah.
all of us are dying, sacrifice कर दो, भगवान भगवान
No,
भगवान को
but that's the whole
it's like
thing,
it's like
and
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that. It's the fear governed them so much, and
But
also the
curiosity, how will curiosity be there if the
if
father
everything is
is so,
puritanical,
you
yeah,
know, yeah, he's so like God fearing all the time. He keeps on
all the
telling
time,
them that
yeah.
this is going to happen. Like, we are all evil
I
creatures.
think
We are all
it's
evil creatures.
also much more. I think all those tendencies and impulsive ideas float from the fact that because you are so pride, you're taking so much pride in your collectivist journey,
Yeah.
in your
Exactly.
religious pursuit, you forget the individualistic
You forget the
uh,
Yeah.
individualistic tendency that any
aspects in
human can
your own
have. Yeah,
collectivist
Yeah.
family,
yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Any
Whom
human can
you
have.
whom you
From
take
that
pride
regard,
in to
even the
protect.
witch is from that regard, even the witch is very idiosyncratic if you think about it,
Hmm.
because she kills the baby and then she uses the baby's entrails as an ointment.
Ointment. Yeah. Amazingly creepy as in it's done in like all shadows. Like, you
Yeah.
sort of see the image, you don't sort of see the image. So yeah, it's very effective in terms of atmosphere. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying ki, even there, it's like, even there, it's like, even Eggers is saying that, the traditional outlook of these witches is these witches are going to hunt, kill babies and everything. And they do, but they are hunting and killing babies is for a very different reason than you would expect. And that makes
Yeah.
it even more creepier. But that also makes it idiosyncratic. A thing that Eggers' idiosyncrasy also extends to quote unquote Black Phillip. The goat.
The goat, yes. Who
Yes.
became like a proper, I think, cultural thing at that point in time when he had sort of, had his moment. But I think one of the interesting things for me is that what you were saying, like this, the witch and the witches, which whatever perception we have of them through folk tales and everything, and then just generally, I think the Satanism and how they are created is so closely linked in The Witch with Puritanism that
Yes.
that's what sort of makes it like incredibly fascinating to me.
I think it's a direct commentary on that only. It's
Yeah.
like they are so like involved. Like a modern horror movie that came out recently is called Azrael. Even Azrael is like,
Hmm.
what if the Puritanism extended to the modern society, and what would happen if something tries
I
to
mean, वो
break
तो
that?
है ही extended. ऐसा
No,
नहीं
no,
है कि नहीं
it's
है.
like, yeah, I know,
Hmm.
I know it is like
Hmm.
more or less extended, but it's like, what if that religious dogmatism was a way of life for these,
Yes.
for modern
Hmm.
society? And it's like Azrael kind of deals with that. I won't say that it
Yeah.
deals with it very well, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's a basic idea,
Yeah.
because I think religious dogmatism itself is a very universal idea that extends to each and every everybody in a
Yeah.
way. Everybody goes through it. Everybody faces it,
Yeah.
and quote unquote Satanism, quote unquote witchcraft, all of these, as much as we can debate about their existence, you also have to realize that all these movements came about as a commentary against Puritanism.
Yeah.
It came
Yeah. This
about as a
film is
yeah, survival or
The Witch is
expression, yeah.
heavily endorsed and accepted by the Church of Satan. So,
Yes.
they
Yes.
they
Which
embrace
I was like, oh boy.
they embrace its occultism
Yes.
in all
Which I
its
was like,
glory.
oh boy. I
Yeah.
don't think that was the point, but okay.
Okay, so it's
No, but
interesting.
again, that also
Hmm.
the overlapping of the fiction and the real world around us.
Hmm.
I think it again comes down to the same thing. It comes down to the extent people, communities, even in a hugely individualistic world, will go to, not just can go to, will
Hmm.
go to just to find a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it
because we are
will feed
social
on to
creatures,
people
right?
with
Yeah, because we are social creatures,
repressed
right? That's
emotions
like,
and
that's like
Hmm.
ingrained within us that we would have to, like, we are going to categorize one group as against us as one group as for us. That
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
come. That doesn't come at the expense of our intelligence. That comes like willingly ingrained within us.
Yeah.
Intelligence comes later.
Yeah.
But I think The Witch is also, I think, no,
Hmm.
regardless of how I still like or love his other films that came later, I
Hmm.
think this is the film that is most adamant on having opening this conversation
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because
Hmm.
it
It
is so
codified
much,
it all, right?
yeah, it's
It,
very focused in that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It codified it all. Like A24, A24 is a distribution company. Let's be very clear to all the
Hmm.
A24 bros. It's a distribution company. There is
I
nothing called
mean,
an
they've gotten
A24 vibe.
into, well,
There
but
is
they've
nothing
gotten
called
into
an A24
production
vibe.
now, too.
Yeah. वो
Yeah.
तो बहुत लेट आया ना,
Uh-huh.
like
Like this time,
this.
it was definitely a distribution company. This premiered at Sundance and was a buzz.
Mm,
One of the rare Sundance, great films,
Peaks.
in my
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah.
This
So,
was at
but
No, no, I agree
Sundance.
with your opinion about
yes,
Oh my
Sundance.
yeah,
God.
yeah.
I agree with your opinion about
Aryan's
Sundance.
expression tells you how unusual this is that this was at Sundance. But anyways,
Yes. No, but
yeah.
again, it's like even if you think about it, like
I
it
mean,
codified the elevated horror in a
it
way.
ended up
Hmm.
being feel good for the Satanic Church, but
Yes, it did.
So yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean,
ticks
that
No,
off
but
ending is.
one.
We'll
what
talk
I
about that. But yeah, go ahead.
no, no, but what I realize is, did it use natural light in a way? I think it
It
did.
used a
Or
lot
was
of
it?
natural lighting. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like the darkness did feel intentional.
yeah.
You know,
But it's not like
like
murky. It's like really well lit. Whenever it needs.
I think it pushed being murky, at least in the opening sequences
Was
where the
was this shot on film as
witch
well?
was, yeah, yeah. I think
Was
it
it
was a
shot on
shot on
film?
digital. No, I think it was
Digital,
shot
I
on
think, right?
digital.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It was made for
I think
4 million, which I'm like, this film is made for 4 million. Like, I'm like, this looks gorgeous
Hmm.
for that budget. But
I
anyways.
think the film I think the natural light itself, helped in
Mhm.
providing the sense of place.
Sure.
More than anything else, it provided the
Mhm.
sense of place. It
I mean, the
provided the
interiors are lit with candlelight and
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
but that also doesn't have exterior sources, I think.
Yeah.
But
And
Hmm.
it's like the mysteries of the forest, like
Mhm. Oh
Hmm.
the
God, those
horrors of the
woods.
forest.
Yeah.
Those woods, yeah, yeah.
There's this, I
It's
think in the beginning, there's this tracking shot of them walking through the woods, and it's taken from like a distance. And it's like you
yes.
can barely see them because all the branches are covering them. And it's like, I'm just like,
Mhm.
this is, firstly, I was like, what an amazing location. I'm like, more than the shot itself, I was like, and then I read that this was not their first choice location. Like they went to Canada and shot it because Canada, like, provides all tax breaks,
Yeah, yeah,
all
woods,
sorts of
right,
tax
right.
Tax,
breaks.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, so they wanted like specifically white pine forest to,
Mm.
again,
Hmm.
he very much a stickler for
Again, it's like your production,
authenticity.
your quote unquote production design or authenticity could only come if you are observant enough and if your perspective comes from living in a place which is so lived in.
Yeah.
Living in a
Hmm.
place which had this sort of vegetation and you are open enough to look forward to and
Yeah.
try to construct a story around that milieu.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
know that we consistently say that I'm again not sure about Nosferatu, but these three films, I know the consistent thing that comes back with Eggers is German expressionism, right? Like a sort of
exactly, yeah.
throwback to that. But in some ways, it's a total opposite because he goes on real life locations and films these things. That's very much
Yeah.
antithetical to expressionist filmmaking, but that authenticity of
unless he
them
takes
staying
unless he
there is
takes one
something.
of those unless he takes one of those quote unquote real life locations and constructs them in such a way
Nope.
that it becomes like
Oh yeah, but he doesn't. I
which
don't think
which the
it's
lighthouse does which the lighthouse does
Lighthouse
somewhat.
does. I think it's less here. I think it's
It's very less here.
yeah, yeah,
I think budget is also an issue here,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
$4 million, it's like of course you are going to go with
But
exterior
like
locations and
that sense of isolation, you can definitely feel in that
yeah.
place. It's just
That's also a
so
filmmaking choice, right?
yeah,
Look at how he's framing all these shots. Like, look
yeah.
at how he's, yeah. Like, in the no, I don't know why I'm bringing like I will bring up the Northman later on, but it's like in the Northman you will see like all those face shots, like all those pan shots, then going towards the face and everything, and it's like it feels deliberately theatrical, like almost like you are expecting a monologue to happen to from the stage.
Hmm.
Whoa, like it keeps a wider shot
It
than sort
keeps a
of.
wider shot, but it
Uh,
still feels the same. It's like
mhm,
Eggers can't get over the boxy nature of the film that he utilized in both The Witch and The
hmm,
Lighthouse.
hmm,
In the Witch, though, the theatrical nature comes from the circumstance and comes from the isolation, comes from the production itself. Like
yeah.
Ralph Ineson's character, when he gets to the terrace
Hmm.
to talk, when he sees his son, you know,
One of the more
quote unquote
creepiest
die.
scenes in the film, which is Caleb, his
Yeah,
son,
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
getting
Yeah, it's
hysterical and
like,
dying here.
yeah, being hysterical and dying.
Hmm.
You see the framing of that shot when Ralph Ineson finally comes. It's
Hmm.
like under any other circumstance, it would ask for a monologue.
Hmm.
Modern Eggers, like 10 years later, ka Eggers would
Hmm.
would take this opportunity to let Innocent deliver a monologue. And why
Hmm.
wouldn't you? Have you heard Innocent's voice? Like he
Oh
would
yeah.
kill a
Hmm.
monologue, yeah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
which is why he's cast as Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four, not Silver Surfer,
Oh,
Galactus in Fantastic Four. So
interesting.
obviously,
Hmm.
yeah. So,
Hmm.
but all of the choices here is both a result of circumstance as
Hmm.
well as a very deliberate choice to ensure that circumstances, atmosphere, and everything
Hmm.
contributes to the overall claustrophobia
Hmm.
and the entire fear of being completely isolated and completely misunderstanding the point. And which is what happens, right? Even if you take into account that the witchcraft exists, the
Hmm.
main fear of it all is the fact that people are losing their goddamn minds because they fear what they can't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as
And that's
simple
very
as that. Yeah.
universal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It's
very
very
universal.
much like it is the which is a story about a family for like very simply it's a story about a family falling apart, and
It's
that doesn't
family
require.
units falling apart,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
also extends somewhat to the lighthouse also.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
units falling apart,
Yeah.
basically.
And that, yeah, I know that this requires a particular sort of this is set in a particular historical context, but that thing that the unit falling apart can happen in any context.
In any
and ju-
context.
and the thing is that in the way it happens here, it feels like it's not like force, it feels like it's genuinely coming through the father figure being this extremely prideful, but he's not. So like I think The Shining is a text which Eggers keeps on mentioning again and again.
But he's not
uh,
he doesn't feel like, you know, completely warped by the evilness in his
Whoa,
environment. He doesn't feel that.
he's not Jack Torrance, is what I
He's
was
not
getting
Jack
at.
Torrance, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he. I think he wants to do good, and he also he sort of chooses to do wrong things when he thinks that it'll help his family in terms of selling his wife's silver cup to get like
Yeah.
money because they didn't sort of have it at that point in time. But it's just that I think he says at one point about the pridefulness of his character, and it's just this whole thing where it's like that sort of weighs everyone down, and then everyone just is so weighed down by that it's just they start to very gradually, just
Yeah.
turn on each other.
And
There's
then
this
you had
wonderful
and then you
scene.
had this then you have this Black Phillip who
Hmm.
apparently is speaking to the ears of these two little kids.
Oh, they are
And it's like
some annoying kids. I mean, good in a good way.
in a good way.
Yeah.
But it's also like those kids shift the story just slightly. You
Hmm.
would think that those kids are resorting to imagination so that they could ignore what is actually happening
Hmm.
right under their noses with the family falling apart.
Yeah.
The fact that Black Phillip is saying anything in their ears, any other
Hmm.
filmmaker would actually not even highlight the supernatural, but
Hmm.
would just show these kids like essentially resorting to imagination and slowly and steadily losing their grip with reality.
Hmm.
You can read it that way.
Hmm.
It's how Eggers finally just doubles down on the supernatural is where the horror actually comes in.
Yeah. Absolutely. And no, I was mentioning there's this shot, wonderful shot, the nighttime shot of Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickey, who I think is the MVP of the movie in terms of
Yes.
performance. So it's Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickie talking about what to do with Anya Taylor-Joy's character in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
film, and they are talking downstairs in their room,
It's a
and
master shot, right? And
yeah,
then
yeah, master
upstairs,
shots,
it's
and
it's the same mirroring of the master
yes,
shot just
yes, yes,
upstairs.
yes.
Yeah,
And like I think Kate Dickie is trying to check if
yeah,
her
yeah, yeah.
children can
Have you
hear what
slept?
she's saying. Have you
Yeah,
slept? Have
yeah,
you
yeah,
slept?
yeah.
And they don't make a noise, but then we just
They
cut
are
to a
listening.
shot
Yeah,
upstairs of what they are listening to. I was just like, I was like, if you remove the dialogue here and you have like intertitles popping, this is absolutely in place with
absolutely
silent cinema.
silent film
It's
level of
genuinely
filmmaking. Yeah,
that.
And because it's not silent, it's also building upon context that they have been listening to their conversations
Yes.
all their
all
lives.
that
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
And imagine, as an audience, now fill up the gaps
Yeah.
of what conversations they might have heard in
Yeah.
their nascent years of adolescence or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where the horror stems in. I think
Yeah.
that's what, like, my brand of horror. I
Hmm.
don't care about elevated horror. I don't care about jump scares or anything.
Yeah. No,
Which
it's the human drama
sadly
horror, na, which I
Eggers
think,
lay. Yeah.
which I think, like again, the Bergman stuff I think comes heavily in this. Like to
very
me, the
much
way
so.
he
Yes.
shoots people's faces is very Bergman. Like Sven Nykvist is, the way he shot people's faces. It feels like you can see their soul bearing out through their faces, sort of like that. And that's why I think it's a great display of performances also. Like, I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy, this was her first breakout, right? So I still think it's one of her best performances. It's really building
Yeah.
upon
Was it a first
one of her
performance?
I think it was
breakouts.
Yeah.
Maybe
first
it was
feature,
her
no?
first only.
Yeah, yeah.
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 So, so yeah, I mean, it's just remarkable, and I think, yeah, like building up
Also,
to. Hmm,
the way Eggers casts people,
hmm,
Yeah.
he's very openly talked about why he cast Anya Taylor-Joy for this movie, for this
hmm,
role, because of how unique of a face, symmetrical,
hmm,
not so symmetrical face structure she has, and especially with those expressive eyes, which is like
hmm,
no wonder if she's become so huge now.
hmm,
Yeah.
And just the physicality of her, that she
hmm.
might seem fragile, but oh,
Yeah, yeah,
like just
she
playing
doesn't
on
come
those.
across as a victim, which I think is very important. Like, not just a
Exactly, yeah.
victim. It feels like she's got something more
I think it's
about her.
essential. I think it's essential that she
Definitely, yeah.
doesn't come off as such, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah,
Otherwise, it would defeat the
Yeah,
the
because
whole point.
and it feels like but again, it does also feel like the whole family has put all their paranoid, like it's a paranoid
projection.
persecution of her essentially by
Mm.
the end, and it's like they
But
have
it's like
pushed
it's
her
yeah, it's
away.
also the persecution of womanhood also in a way,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what they're
Mm.
Of
doing
course.
essentially.
Kate Dickie has a great scene where she tells Ralph Ineson about her desires as a woman, I think, and then how
Yeah.
Mm.
she was closest to Christ more than her husband when he was on earth. And I was like, is she talking about Christ or is she talking about the devil? Because I think Anya Taylor-Joy has a similar experience later on with Black Phillip, who comes off.
Yeah.
Who becomes a man later and asks her,
Mm.
Mm.
"Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?"
And it's
Uh,
also like, do you remember a movie called Lamb?
yes, I do. Very cute
Mm.
lamb. Not a good movie.
Yes, not a
Yeah,
good movie.
yeah.
You remember its ending?
Yes.
Yes.
You mean non-ending?
Non-ending.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just saying कि Eggers kinda sorta, inspired a
Knows
lot
his
of
shit.
people.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
there's no non-ending. The ending for this movie is terrific, I think. I
No, I'm just
know.
saying कि that entire ending of Lamb definitely
Mm,
feels like
the
somebody took
lamb
that
is like the
somebody took that some
quintessential
no
example
somebody
of the
took that
A24
Black
film.
Phillip thing. Somebody took that Black Phillip ka concept and
Ah,
essentially, yeah,
Mm.
wanted to recreate that same feeling of shock that happens when Black Phillip ka final, Minotaur-esque
yes, yes,
structure
yes.
finally
Yeah,
evolves. So,
yeah.
yeah. Did
No,
not like
no.
that movie. Really did not like
No,
Lamb.
no, I also don't like it. I like the lamb though. Very cute
The
lamb.
cute lamb you like, yes.
I mean, it's not. It shouldn't be cute, but whatever.
Lamb ka
But yeah,
father
the
nobody does, but ठीक है. Yes.
No, but yeah, I was just talking about the finale of The Witch and just like, I mean, do you think it's a liberation or do you think it's another succumbing to a different sort of
I think
entrapment
for Eggers, it's like that era liberation,
has a perverse
liberation
implication,
in
I
this
suppose.
context for that era, liberation meant like seduction by the devil. At least that's what they thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I
could
mean,
be extremely dark. Could be extremely dark in a way
it's
also.
like it has that double meaning for me at least. Like it's just the whole thing
Yeah.
that I think someone said or someone's written about it. How last shot, you should compare the first shot and last shot of the film. First shot is Anya
Yes.
Taylor-Joy looking upwards to a
Hmm.
god, and
Yes.
in this she's levitating
She's
towards
levitating
a
Hmm.
god.
towards a god. Yes.
So yeah, it's interesting to see that in that context. Which, if you look at it in that context, to me, it's clearly a twisted sort of happy ending, where she
Yes.
basically kills off her whole family, or like her family
Hmm.
is killed off, and she gains a sort of
Liberation.
liberation. But then there's also this
Enlightenment in a
angle,
way. Enlightenment in a way.
still like living deliciously, whatever that means,
Yes.
right? It's just this whole thing where you are allowed to live on a freer terms than you were allowed before, but it is still someone else's terms, the devil's
Yes.
terms, right? So
It's
you can see it
essentially
as,
it's essentially
yeah,
what living in a cult is like, right? Free
yeah,
love and
essentially,
everything, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's got that double implication for me, which I think is fascinating, like to me. So
Hmm.
yeah, are in any other thoughts you have on that?
No, I just wish that uh I still wish that Eggers continues to make more such original films in a way that he is like not remaking or retelling old
This is
classic
not going to be
stories.
good
And if
on
he's doing
Nosferatu, I
that,
think.
and
Yeah.
if he's doing that, then he should he should completely own whatever touch-ups and whatever new takes that
Yeah,
he's
like
incorporating in those stories.
recontextualize it, like modernize it.
Which is again,
I
I think
His
anyone
entire
listening to
shtick
this
is
might
recontextualization, which is why I'm very surprised to hear from Aryan that for Nosferatu he's
again
not doing
this
much at
might
all.
like I can very well understand like whenever we talk about Northman, which is after the Lighthouse,
Mm,
I can understand this criticism and this knack that oh this guy it's like the Northman is basically retelling of Hamlet, right? The age-old
mhm,
story. But he seemed to like that movie. Then why doesn't he like Nosferatu? Which I would love to expand upon.
mm,
My only kind of uh, disappointment with that is that when we talk about the Northman, I'll consistently say how he's owning every decision that he's made in that
mhm.
film.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of changes that he's making, but
Mhm,
the character's journey, it seems very focused,
mhm.
which is not the
Hmm.
case for Nosferatu.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll go there later.
Interesting. Do you want to
Yeah.
go to Northman first and then go to Lighthouse, or we can go there
We
also?
can talk about the Lighthouse and some again,
Okay, yeah. So let's move
very
to the Lighthouse.
What?
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 What? What?
What? What?
What?
What? What?
What?
What?
What?
What?
What?
What? What? What? What? What? What? What? What? What? What?
Daddy! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow!
Again, another New England setting, 1890s. It's directed by him, of course, written by him and his brother, Max Eggers.
Max Eggers, yes.
oh
Shot
that
again by Blaschke, edited same by Louis Ford, same team as The Witch essentially, and
mm,
starring Robert Pattinson. I think doing experimental stuff,
four
especially at
years
that stage in
after
life.
4 years
Yes.
after the witch, right?
Yeah, 4 years
Four
after
years
the
after
witch.
The Witch, yes, and Willem Dafoe,
One
who's
year after the King, I think. 1 year after the King, I think.
No, it
the
was the
Timothy
same year.
Chalamet one, like
Timothy Chalamet, yeah, in
David
which he's
Mitchell.
playing.
King was 18.
Hmm.
Yeah, 18. I think King was 18. In
Yeah.
which he played the French. In which he played the French prince, and he was He was going for it.
No, it was the
Let's just
same year.
put
It
it
was
that way.
29.
Yes,
Was the
yeah.
same year? Okay. Anyways, Willem
He
Dafoe,
was
who's
going for it in that
yeah,
year mostly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe, I think, is like one of the perfect Eggers actors, or like should generally be in Eggers films. I think he gets
Mm.
it. Until
Apparently he has
I
been
think
offered more roles in more movies of Eggers. Yeah.
okay,
So
I think Aryan might
He's
have some
just
comment about Nosferatu, but today I shall
he's
refer.
like just playing a heightened version of him at this point. He's having a blast
Yeah, yeah. I
working
mean,
on like
I
Eggers
think, but
films
I think his presence sort of makes a difference for me in for
Hmm.
example Lighthouse and Northman. I
because it
not
it only has two people.
Yeah, in this though, of course, but even Northman, I think there's too little of him. So it's
Yeah,
one
Northman
of
में कुछ
those
है ही
things. So
नहीं.
he's almost unrecognizable, right? In the
yeah, yeah,
Northman,
yeah.
if
He's
from what I
barely there. He's
remember.
there for like 5 minutes. He plays Ruhda
Heimer.
essentially in
Heimer.
some
Right.
ways, or like witch, or like the witches of whatever Macbeth or
He
whatever.
plays
Nonce.
he plays Rafiki, especially
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
like in the Lion King.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Northman, Lion
the
King, you get the connection.
Yes,
So
yes,
anyway.
yes. The lighthouse essentially though is this is again my plot, so I apologize for the imperfection. A God-fearing quote unquote wiki
Hmm.
lighthouse keeper, like that's what a wiki is, slowly
You like
spills
me lobster, yeah? No?
a God-fearing wiki
I mean,
slow
considering उस lobster में था क्या? Considering lobster कहाँ से भी आया है?
whatever
Lobster pot
lobster
में तो था.
means, lobster can also mean
हाँ.
whatever.
नहीं
A
सर,
god
इसमें lobster ही था, but जो भी.
okay. ठीक है.
I'm not even going to where the train of thought is going.
Okay.
But जो भी हो.
Anyways, he slowly spills his beans to his superior as he succumbs to alcohol, torrid weather conditions, and most of all, his own guilty conscience.
Hmm.
That's as much as I
As
got
well
out
as
of
the
it.
toy mermaid, as well as the toy mermaid that he sleeps with. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, very loosey goosey. That's the way I can describe Lighthouse. In some ways, it's very much a two-hander, people locked in one location and they slowly go mad together. In some ways,
Yes.
you can even describe it as that. And yeah, but again, it has many sources. It sort of,
It's the
began.
pandemic movie before the pandemic set in.
Yeah,
It's essentially the
absolutely.
pandemic experience
Yeah,
in
and
a way.
it's just to some notes about its production. It was, uh, it began sort of as an adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe unfinished short story. Like Max Eggers wanted to write it but couldn't finish it. Then, the Robert Eggers jumped onto it, and then they sort of relied on this the Smalls Lighthouse tragedy, which is basically lays out all the framework for this the
Yeah.
film, and. It's actually, if you see the Telltale Heart, the short
Hmm.
that Eggers has made, it has a lot of resonances from that also. So you can literally watch that. I thought Telltale Heart was very short. I thought
Hmm.
this is too long. So, it's one of those things where
Hmm.
I was like,
Hmm.
when I watched this short, I was like, this can easily be like a 30-40 minute thing, and this would be great.
Hmm.
And in this Lighthouse, I was like, it could easily be like 80 minutes
This
long, and
time
it
when
would
I
be
watched, I
decent.
was like, this is 10 minutes too long.
Sure. Okay.
You guys
I
watched it, and I couldn't watch it. I couldn't rewatch it today, but
hmm,
I pulled it up on Letterboxd, and I I always thought, even though I've not rewatched it since 2019, I
hmm,
always thought it's 2 hours, and I was like 110 minutes,
yeah,
104, I think, something like that.
109 or 4.
109 minutes. I
9
mean,
minutes,
nine
yeah.
minutes. I mean, you
So
take
it
five
does.
minutes off for credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can take that. It
Yeah,
may be 10 minutes too
Hmm.
long, but
yeah,
I
It
have
is
no
10 minutes
complaints.
too long. At least I felt it is definitely 10 minutes too
yeah.
long. To the extent
Again,
that many people were like, they could not understand what the lighthouse is about. Like, when Pattinson's character is essentially, you know, bearing Defoe's character alive, and
hmm
Hmm.
Defoe's character is essentially reciting the poem,
hmm
he's telling everything.
hmm
He's telling what the inspirations are. He's
hmm
telling Protean thoughts, Promethean fire. I'm like, सब बता दो ना. You're telling everything only. क्या
okay,
मतलब people
interesting.
can't understand this?
No, no,
Literally telling everything.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me. Okay, so Lighthouse. I'll start because I think I'm the coldest on the film. Coldest on the film as a I love the surface of the film. I don't find anything beneath it, sort of way. Like beneath it, like there is stuff
You should
beneath
try
it.
digging it deep.
You should be
I
digging in more.
this is my same comment I made for your I saw the TV glow and I'm like अब टीवी के अंदर और झांको थोड़ा.
नहीं,
You know, it's like
मुझे नहीं झांकना,
अंधा
वो
हो
पिंक
जाऊंगा
ग्लो
सर.
पसंद नहीं
oh
है.
God. Okay, anyways. No. I no. So I
Sir,
think if I dig,
clearly I'm in the minority because everybody loves I saw the TV
not
glow.
everybody
हम
loves it.
लोग
There's a
का
certain sect.
पीपीपी कम्युनिटी है ना,
हाँ,
कोई नहीं.
मैं और आर्यन तो या एग्जैक्टली पीपीसी
No,
कम्युनिटी के
no. So that's why you like Lighthouse also. It's all PPP, no?
फुल्ली.
Uh, and PPP also in the terms of they are peeing wherever they want, I suppose. But
Wherever they
And
want, yeah.
no,
farting.
They're not
and
just
farting.
peeing wherever they want. They're doing everything wherever
No,
they
no.
want.
I just think whatever, like, I think if I dig deeper, I don't think there's much. I'm happy for you guys to tell me that there is. I just think whatever it's doing in terms of like if I dig deeper, I think it's done before. Which I mean, I know everything is done before, but like in this, I'm like, yeah, ठीक है. Like to me, it's just like it's again. To me, can I just summarize this by saying to me, this is spending 1 hour 90 minutes or whatever 1 hour 50 minutes with two Jack Torrances from The Shining, and I don't like Jack Torrance.
I think I buy
Uh,
that.
yeah.
I think I somewhat buy that.
And for
Yes.
me, I think I respond to the film quite a bit until it sort of stumbles into that drunken stupor. So before,
That's like 40 minutes left. The
but
so like
that's
half the movie,
escalation,
half
bro.
the
That's
movie.
escalation.
No, so
Yeah.
half the movie,
How
when
can
as
you?
soon as he kills that seagull, right, which is
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
central thing, and I think that's a great scene in the film. It's like
Yes.
both like comedic a little bit, but like it also
Hmm.
is genuinely violent. Like I was like
Hmm.
taken aback a little bit.
Hmm.
So when that happens and the wind turns, I know he like puts like he takes the camera like almost like a crane up, and then like you see the wind turning as soon as that happens, and then they sort of get more and more sort of into this drunken like they become drunk, they sort of start to quarrel, they start to spill their secrets all the way, and I was like, okay, well, I'm like, at that point in time I would happily take a more esoteric approach, like more esoteric than this also, where like all the beans aren't spilt, or I would take a sort of all so okay, one more thing and then you guys can go. I'm surprised again that this film has a score, like a background score. It has a very
Yes.
honking background score, that too. Like, it is very, almost in your face. The foghorn is good. I like the foghorn. I like the wind. I like everything, like the diegetic stuff I like. But
Hmm.
I think वो थोड़ा the declarative sort of style at times sort of takes me out of it also. Like to me, it was just like, to me, if this sort of just sinks us into this world and like we sort of get lost in it, and I do get lost in it, especially for half of it. I think it's sort of juggling dream and reality decently well. But once it sort of overplays its sort of hand almost with what is happening, and I think it does, as you said, like he
Hmm.
says everything, and I think to me it's most like a guilty conscience thing for a man. Like he's killed someone, and then he's sort of circulating in his head what is happening. Like the more he stays, the more he drinks, the true self. Like the man reveals his
Hmm.
true self, sort of like that, and then
Hmm.
it has, I know, lofty comparison, shades of Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, in that
Hmm.
you go to he's consistently wanting to see
A
this
space
zone,
that
like
puts you in
this
a
light,
mental.
sort of light.
Yeah.
And I think this relates to Prometheus also, right? I think what you were saying about that, like this whole thing
Hmm.
where.
Yeah. It's very weird. It relates to the how do I put this? Relates to the myth of Proteus as well as Prometheus. Like
Hmm.
William
Hmm.
Dafoe's character is clearly Proteus
Hmm.
in
What
a
is
way.
that? I'm just asking for, yeah.
No. Proteus is essentially like he used to be one of those minor gods who used to work under Poseidon.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
essentially, he used to be the person who was imprisoned in an island, and
Hmm.
he used to be the person who used to essentially afford punishment to people who would not listen to him in a way.
Okay.
So it's like one of those situations. Listen, in the Greek mythology, the gods were extremely petty people. ठीक है? None of these gods were nice people. Like
Gods are
I
nice
am,
people.
I am currently going through like Iliad and Odyssey, and
Oh, nice.
oh my god, Homer did not like the gods at all. At
Hmm.
all. He's describing the gods as narcissistic a-holes. And I'm like, yikes. Like, I can understand what you mean, but come on. So, like, Proteus could foretell the future, which is why when Willem Dafoe's character very accurately describes how Robert Pattinson's character would ultimately die,
Yeah.
Mm.
that final sequence.
Hmm.
So, and he also only answers to those people who are capable of capturing him, which is why when he's finally captured, which is why when he's finally being buried down,
Hmm.
he's like essentially telling everything.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ki, this is what happened, this is why I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But and the entire conceit of the Promethean mythology is what happens with Pattinson's character, in which he is drawn to the light.
Mhm.
The Promethean mythology is Prometheus the Titan would steal fire from the gods and give to humanity,
Mhm.
essentially, because he was fond of humanity, so he would steal fire from the gods.
Yeah.
And for that he was punished by a raven, essentially, you know, eating through his skin and taking his liver and
Oh, so it's
eating it, and
literally the
then
Promethean thing at the end then.
yeah, and then the liver would grow back, and then the raven would eat it again.
Okay,
So
okay.
Mm.
And
very
like a
petty people these
forever
gods were.
doom. No, but also like there is no way out of your own head and of your own whatever guilt. I suppose
Yeah,
to me it's a lot about guilt. Again, there's
it is
another
very
way
much
to
about guilt. Yeah,
like
it
guilt
is
of
that
I
vicious
think
cycle.
guilt
It
and
is the vicious
repression.
cycle about guilt, basically. Like,
repression, guilt, yeah, like and then
So
yeah, sorry,
this
go.
might seem like a tangent, but I think I was going through this just today, earlier
Mhm.
this morning. So on the letterbox review for Nosferatu,
Hmm.
Thomas Flight starts his review
Hmm.
with by quoting Young, and I'm
Hmm.
like, the moment you start quoting Young, you are like onto something, right?
Hmm.
And he
I think it's
compares the
heavily
entire.
implied only that it's very
Hmm.
Jungian only.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I
Hmm.
was saying. This was the review, his review for Nosferatu.
Mhm.
And he elaborates upon the self and the shadow. Okay.
Mhm. Hmm.
And to anyone who's listening, go through that review. It doesn't have it doesn't have spoilers for
Mhm.
Nosferatu
Mhm.
as what I don't think it has any spoilers for Nosferatu, so you can use
Mhm.
that as a good reference point. Whatever I was reading
Hmm.
on that, I wasn't thinking of Nosferatu
You're
anymore.
thinking of
I
You
Lighthouse.
were
was
thinking
thinking
about
of the
Lighthouse.
Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I was like, this is the movie where he exemplifies on the Jungian aspects of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
spirit
all that
because
is
this,
there. There's literally an
yeah,
image of, I think
exact the
there's an
shadow.
image. Yeah, 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 like there's this image where they're sitting on the dinner table and he freaks him out. Willem
Mm,
Dafoe sort of, says that you can't kill a seagull, killing this. I mean,
yeah,
of course, he says it in his wonderfully croaky voice,
Yeah.
yeah,
that you can't kill a seagull.
bad omen or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see like him, like Robert Pattinson standing, but like a bigger shadow of him standing over him.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
like, again, if you want to see all that, it's there in the images also.
Mm.
Yeah. बोलो बोलो ahead. मैं
Which
तो
is
मैंने बकवास कर ली
which
अपनी.
is how I
No,
think
no, I'm waiting for
even the
Aryan to
lighthouse works.
continue.
The
Hmm.
lighthouse works for me is because it can seem very pretentious because, oh, look at me, I'm borrowing
I don't
from
think it's
Greek
pretentious.
mythology.
But
But
anyways,
it
yeah.
is very well it
I
is
think
very
it's
well rooted in
remixed.
this.
I think it's
Hmm.
It
remixed.
is
It comes off as pretentious, but it is, I think, too open and too revealing about
many
its own
people have called
inspiration
it
to be.
pretentious. Many
Yeah.
people
No,
have
no,
called it
that like
pretentious,
I
which
can
is
understand why
reasonable too.
someone would make that claim. I just think
It's
again,
too open about its inspirations to call
Yeah,
you pretentious. Like,
exactly.
pretentious,
and
And
matlab, only
it
you
is
can
rooted
understand
in the
its
young, it
fun
has a
thing. Yeah.
full-on
yeah.
Jungian reading.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
And
has a
I
full-on
think one
him.
of the crucial things why I still think it's a like I like it is
Mm.
because it's funny
It is
sometimes.
very
Oh
funny.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's a
mean,
It
it
has a
full
doesn't.
on
sense of humor.
comedy. It's
And
a full
that's
on
why I was saying,
comedy
like,
at
I'll
times. Yeah.
really appreciate Willem Dafoe. Robert Pattinson's also great, and they do
Y-
a nice
Mm.
switcheroo
You
in the film.
remember you remember that sequence where both of them were like drinking and they were like, what, and then it like reaches a crescendo. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. No, no,
two
I love
barking dogs.
I think the biggest laugh I had was when when he's Robert Pattinson's Willem Dafoe is monologuing to Robert Pattinson about why he doesn't like his food, like whatever
Yes.
food he
Oh
cooks,
yes,
and he's
yes,
Yeah.
that
basically
was.
telling him, like he gives this long monologue, and then Robert Pattinson like, fine, I like your food, something
Fine.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Fine.
Yeah,
Have it your way.
yeah. So it's got that, and of course it's like there's the fart humor and all that also. But yeah, I think
Your
it's
goddamn farts. Yes.
yeah. No, but I think it's just to do with uh, the bigness of the performances. Like I think those are enjoyable. So again, the surface to me is
Again,
still
those are
very
enjoyable,
enjoyable.
but I won't begrudge anybody who finds them like disconnecting from the entire humanity of those characters
Sure.
at all.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
even I felt it like somewhat diminishing the
Mhm.
connection you can have with these characters.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is a two-hander, right?
Hmm.
So you're supposed to feel for those characters and you're supposed to follow their journey as they lose their mind. All the remixing of all this mythology and everything, it's like cherry on top anyway.
Mhm.
So that's like
Hmm.
fine. But due to the
Counterpoint nahi hai na?
due
Like
to the overt theatricality of it all, sometimes you feel disconnected. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes you do feel disconnected,
yeah.
especially
And
when Defoe is delivering some of his monologues. He's doing it so well. I'm like, भाई ये तो मतलब किसी थिएट्रिकल प्रोडक्शन में ही कर देते ना.
yeah. No, no, it is. I mean, I don't mind the theatrical nature of it
But
that
then
much. It's
again,
just
the theatrical nature is stemming from how Eckers is like a fan of silent films and expressionism, right?
yeah. नहीं but
Yeah,
उनमें
It
dialogue नहीं
is
था.
but
exaggerated.
इसमें dialogue है ना. It's the same problem we had with Megalopolis. Same problem.
Hmm. No,
साइलेंट ही बनाओ ना, डायलॉग क्यों डाल रहे हो?
हाँ.
साइलेंट ही बनाओ ना, डायलॉग क्यों डाल रहे हो?
I would say that Lighthouse is a better film than
Lighthouse is much
Megalopolis.
better. I am not even
Uh,
denying. Lighthouse is much better.
I think it's my favorite of his.
yeah, which again, I think it's one of those variable films. I feel like, the more you can definitely get more out of it than I did personally in terms of,
Hmm.
I got
thematics
less
and all
out of
that.
it this time around.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was like, wow,
I am somewhat disappointed.
yeah. Well, I mean, whatever. Like I also got slightly less out of it, but then I also appreciated the formal stuff even more than I did before. To me, it was like,
Hmm.
oh, this is like super impressive. Like this could be shown in like schools, film schools, like later on for
But
this.
also the surprise factor of just having a film of this scale तो बोल भी नहीं सकते, but a film of this sort completely wash over you, that's entirely gone now when you're rewatching it. That's why I
Huh.
found like I had a blast back in 2019 when I constantly showed it to different group of
Mm-hmm.
friends. Back then I actually had different group of friends. But yeah, I think I'm not rewatching it right now because I know if I watch it alone after so many years, because we have seen variations of the same thing,
Yeah. No,
I
but it still
might not
looks
play.
very unique. Like that 1.19 to 1 aspect
Looks
ratio
spin, it is
Yeah.
definitely
is
very,
very effective. Yeah.
yeah. It is overall also a very unique
नहीं
experience
वो
to
क्या
watch
है
anyway.
वो
This
जो
time
तुझे
around,
you didn't like that movie no I rewatched it and I actually thought it was fine
which
Ennis
one?
Men Ennis Men that
Ennisman.
reminded me a lot of Lighthouse this time when I watched it
No,
just
Ennisman felt like what again. It's very much an inspiration.
hmm.
Again, Eggers more or less is introducing this sort of stuff. Nah, but
Yeah.
Ennisman is too esoteric for its own good.
No, I'm not saying it's not I'm just saying they this time when I watched Lighthouse I was like they have very much some
No,
resonances
they have
to
a
them.
similar sensibility, but like
Hmm.
at least the entire counterpoint, even if I don't like the counterpoint, is the fact that at the end of the day, it's a very human story
Yeah,
of
yeah,
two people.
yeah, yeah.
Two
This is
people.
more rooted in
Yeah,
human
this is more like
guilt and
Ennisman was more like a
conscience.
big picture thingy of
Yeah.
the you know isolation of the island overall
Island and
and
the
what that
island's
happens.
ghosts and everything. This is
Island
much more
ghosts
to
and
do.
everything.
This
Yeah.
is more to do with sort of psychological breakdown. Again, The
Yes, exactly.
Shining. Like I've started realizing how much that film, which I've come around to, is like
Massively, some turns out.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
which like it dominates so many of these films. I'm just like, especially these two films, not the Northman, which we will move on to.
Yes.
But if you guys, unless you guys have other thoughts on the Lighthouse, please go ahead. One of the notes
No,
I
no,
had
we are
was so
done.
many A24isms though, like in this, like
Sir, that entire stick of movies only came out of Eggers only.
I know. But
Hmm.
there's lots of like interesting facts or whatever things about, like I didn't know about, they shot this in Cape Forchu, home to Nova Scotia. Again, Canada gave them a lot of tax breaks apparently. So, all that is there. Then, yeah, I mean, again, his inspirations are silent films. I think this time he was looking more at sort of French cinema from the 1930s by Jean Epstein and Jean Gremillon. So, a lot of stuff. I'm
The
curious to check out
French
their
again.
films.
That's why the didactism of
Yeah. The French
characters
again.
staying out.
I don't mind that in this, like that way. But I mean, I
I'm
think
just saying
again,
the French
one
again.
John Epstein's good. He's great, actually.
Not
What good
denying
I'm saying.
again. Not denying. But French.
They are
Just.
not that bad. Emilia Perez से इतना बुरा effect हो गया है आपका
Sir,
कि I think
Emilia
you're not
Perez
gonna.
isn't the only thing that they have given which I can't stand. They have given a lot of other things also which I couldn't stand.
What?
Emilia Perez is just the one. Emilia Perez is just a long line of thingies. Emilia
Wait, you
Perez takes
love
the
John K.
cake.
Millwell.
Sir, exceptions है, rule तो नहीं है.
You like Goddard.
Speaking of exception,
सर
exceptions,
ये क्या बड़ा बात कह दिया. I like Godard.
No, you'll hate him, but I'm just saying it. Anyways, we shall move on to the exception, as Aryan was saying, the Northman.
I cannot escape my fate.
Can you guys introduce this? I'll be back. क्या बोलूं मैं? I legitimately didn't take notes after watching it this time because I was like, I'll leave
you
it
fell asleep.
blank because I want to leave my page blank because the film left me empty,
Northman is
blank.
basically
I
the
don't know.
story of Northman is the story of Hamlet.
Hmm.
Or Hamlet.
No, Hamlet comes later.
Okay.
Hamlet
I
का
think it
main
is.
inspiration is then Hamlet inspires Shakespeare to write the story of
Oh,
Hamlet.
Yeah.
So
right.
essentially,
But
yeah.
hair same ही. Exactly.
Yeah, which is a bigger problem this movie also
It's
has.
a
कि
proper
Hamlet का
revenge story.
theatricality नहीं है
Hmm.
इसमें.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's basically like it's a story of Hamlet in which he tries to make. He's essentially Robert Eggers is essentially going from New England mythology to कुछ New
To a
England to
studio
Greek
film.
mythology. Then he goes to make full on
Norse.
Norse mythology
Yeah.
with थोड़ा Slavic, थोड़ा paganism. But ultimately, it's a
Accent का
story.
buffet है इस picture में,
Yeah, but
honestly. I was just
ultimately, it's
like,
that same story. Ultimately, it's the same story of revenge of one guy. So one guy who loses his father after being betrayed by his uncle, and then he escapes, and then he's fueled by vengeance, and he wants to kill his uncle, his mother, and everything. It's Hamlet. It's Lion King. It's Heather. Whatever the flying
I
fuck
was
you want
about
to
to
say.
say,
Fun fact,
what I might
I
do.
might have
Sorry,
Dhruv
go ahead.
actually.
Uh,
I might have. I've not rewatched the Northman.
uh,
Okay, I find
Good.
I had a blast while watching it. I
Okay.
still think I like it more than his recent film, which
Okay.
I like a lot, but not
Yeah.
going to rewatch that anytime soon for the
Yeah.
next 100 years at least. But yeah, the thing is that I might have liked The Northman more when it came out because 21 was also the same year when I had watched Heather
22.
for the first time.
22.
22.
22.
It was the first time when I had watched
That's why
Heather,
you
and
liked it more. I would think you'd like it less. I thought it's the
I'll
opposite.
No, he was
so
filling in the gaps ना जो हम नहीं कर
Ah,
पाए क्योंकि in the second half it's like बीच बीच पे he's like I have got the sword. I'm going to take the revenge, but I'm not going to because a prophecy had told me I will kill in the gates of hell. I'm like, अरे चूती ये prophecy
but
खुद बना के
I
मार देना क्या wait
it
कर रहा
is no,
है?
but I think it is very committed to its
it is very committed.
It
it
is
is
very
I'm not
committed.
that's
It's a
denying.
what I
different thing that I don't buy the commitment of the character only क्योंकि और
Huh.
कुछ है
the
नहीं
the,
character में.
the thing is okay, so now the own surprisingly not a lot of people are making comparisons or comparisons between this and his recent Nosferatu, because
Hmm.
of course it's a remake, so people will always
सर
compare it
देखा नहीं है
to
ना
a
अभी
film
तक
that.
वो भी एक
हमने तो
प्रॉब्लम
नहीं देखा
But
सर
no,
हाँ.
no. Here's the thing.
Anyways,
Okay,
just to mention
had
one thing about Northman, it's the first film
Mhm.
not who has different composers, so it's not composed by the same guy. Otherwise, the team is same, and he
राइट
has a
Same director.
co-writer in I think Icelandic poet, Norwegian poet. I don't know.
स्वान
Uh,
राइट स्वान
yes,
राइट
yes,
या
yes, yes.
या
And cast, as we should mention because we will be talking about them, is
his
Alexander
most high
Skarsgård.
profile cast until Nosferatu this is like
No, no,
Alexander
this is more high
Skarsgård.
profile than Nosferatu, no?
No, this is not
Cast-wise.
No,
more high profile.
Really?
You have Alexander
because
Skarsgård, you
Lily
have
Rose
Anya
Depp
Taylor-Joy, you have
blew up
Nicole
after.
Kidman.
Lily Rose Depp
Yeah.
is more popular than Nicole Kidman?
Now, after that horrendous show, yeah,
Oh,
and
after
in
the
After The
Paris,
Idol.
Okay.
yeah,
After The Idol.
yeah,
Yes.
Oh.
for better or worse.
That masterpiece of a
मतलब
show.
she
Piss
like
spelled in PISS.
ironically popular then, right? Not
नहीं कोई
popular.
ironic नहीं है.
No, in pop culture, she is very popular.
Okay, I
They
didn't
are
know this.
selling, yeah.
Anyways,
Lily
so
Rose
Her and
Depp is
Defoe are like,
quite well
Dafoe
known.
is probably playing a bit part in Nosferatu. He's not like a main character, right? So,
No,
he
he's not.
plays a major part too.
okay, fine.
Defoe,
Good.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dafoe.
Dafoe.
Okay, I'll go to Nosferatu later. But okay,
Yes.
but I want to start with this. So, the
Yeah.
Northman and Nosferatu,
Hmm.
to make it simpler to understand, to make my analogy make some sense,
Hmm.
let's break it down to this, that they're basically retelling of the same story. Okay, they're like
Yes.
ancient myths, and they're like it's a remake. Both
Mhm.
these films are remakes. Okay,
Mhm.
Both these films are
now
adaptations of stories which
Yes.
used to
exactly.
exist.
Now
Yeah.
my entire point of liking one more than the other and appreciating the Northman way more than appreciating Nosferatu is that the Northman, there's a lot of psychosexual underlyings and recurring themes in both the stories. Okay, because
Okay.
Hamlet is
I
like,
mean,
it
yeah,
is
Nosferatu is
so
very
psychosexual.
psychosexual from its
Nosferatu
origin.
तो
Vampire stories,
psychosexual
the
है ही.
original vampire story by, I forget that guy's name, but
Murnau.
yeah, no,
The
the story,
original story, Bram Stoker,
yeah,
Dracula.
Bram Stoker.
Huh.
Okay, it
वो तो
has a
ड्रैकुला उसको
lot of
ड्रैकुला कहते हैं सर.
Dracula,
Uh-huh.
right.
हाँ.
It has a lot of like psychosexual underpinnings, but
Yeah.
no filmmaker has ever has completely owned it on the big screen. Okay.
Sure.
Now my issue is
I
that
mean,
the
censors
Northman
का भी issue होगा just
never
to say that, yeah.
the
हाँ
Northman
वो भी
never
था.
exactly, but the Northman never tries to make it one of its main motifs or themes
Very
throughout its
surprising.
runtime. Okay.
Okay.
And yeah, exactly. It might be a disappointment, but it never makes that as something for you to like care about the
Mm-hmm.
protagonist. It's a simple revenge story with all the
Mm-hmm.
grandiosity around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nosferatu very clearly wants to say a lot by incorporating the psychosexual element, but
Mm.
this is all I'm going to say without spoiling anything. There's a good portion of the movie, the
Mm.
entire second act, where
Mm.
we don't even see Lily Rose Depp's character.
Oh.
Which is why, yeah, if you want to make these new spins, if you want to add more spins, own them,
Okay.
explore them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Then you're coming at
because
the very end.
Aryan, I am going to
Yeah.
remind you, okay, I have seen the original Nosferatu, ठीक है, the
Exactly.
1922
Yeah.
one. Again,
Neither
great movie.
Neither does that.
Yeah,
Right?
great
But
movie.
that doesn't pretend to be anything like
Lily
that, no?
Rose, Lily
Exactly.
Rose Depp ka character even in that original movie, she's not there for the entirety of the second act.
Exactly.
She's not there.
Exactly. But she is. I don't want to spoil it, but she's also not very apparent in the film's last act. Right.
Okay, understood. Huh. Okay,
This
okay.
movie takes some swings, but it never owns them.
Okay.
And then it wants you to feel at the end that, oh, this is a new spin, right?
Like if
But
you are
it's
going
a
to
very safe
no,
remake.
like
It's a very
he's
safe
not
studio film.
like this is Eggers, like this is Eggers was known Eggers is known for his like recontextualization and remixing of different mythologies, right? It seems from listening to Aryan's point of view
Worryingly.
and our Northman ka impression. I like the Northman more than Dhruv because I like revenge movies. I like them
I
way
like it
more.
a lot.
Yeah, I like revenge
Yeah.
movies also. I just don't
I
like to
like
sleep
revenge
in them.
movies.
Sorry.
Again,
Uh,
I think that him being shoehorned in these quote unquote studio movies somehow makes it feel for him to be constrained in remixing or bringing him his own individuality. I think the Northman at least has some of the individuality in it. Ki
It
he's not
has that
shying away.
individuality because
Yeah.
Amartya, the Northman, it has a lot of problems, okay, but it is never formally rigid the way Nosferatu is.
It
Oh,
is not.
It,
Yeah, it is not
really? I
yeah,
shying
think,
away.
okay,
yeah,
interesting. I think
yes,
Northman is
yes.
very formally rigid.
I think the Northman is having a blast of what it actually
No,
is.
no, I
Really?
don't
I
think it is
think it's very
shying away from a lot of
self-serious.
things. I don't think it is shying away from a lot of things. I don't think the Northman
Yeah.
is shying away from being extremely unflinchingly brutal in
Mm,
making the character as unsympathetic as possible, even though he is seeking revenge
mm,
against extremely violent act which is being inflicted on his family.
mm,
And it also doesn't shy away from Nicole Kidman's character and the entire psychosexuality of Oedipal nature of her relationship
mm,
with her son.
But that's
Like
very minimal.
Nicole Kidman in that little scene eats the entire movie.
Yep.
That
mm,
little scene, she eats that entire movie. Like
Yeah.
mm,
she elevates that entire movie. But again, what I miss from Hamlet is
mm,
there is nothing for me which connects me to Hamlet. In
mm, mm,
Hamlet, you will find moments, even and in adaptations of Hamlet, where you will see
Heather.
these characters plagued by self doubt. At
Hmm.
least Hamlet being
mm.
Hmm.
plagued at least by self doubt, or Hamlet being completely
इसमें
hollowed out when
है
the revenge
एंड में
happens.
एकदम
There are
छो
moments
थोड़ा सा.
before,
सर वो तो
no,
इतना
even before
छोटा सा
he
है कि क्या
ventures onto
फायदा.
that ship while
हाँ.
repeating that same line of dialogue, when
Hmm.
he leaves the island, even then it's there, no, the sense of
But
doubt
that
and
is that is
purpose.
quite less, na. Like I'm
Mm,
telling you why I felt it is quite less. क्योंकि बीच में when he's doing all this revenge thing now, which is one of my bigger criticisms about this movie.
Hmm.
I can
mm,
understand that you are making these swings. I can understand that you are giving me a lot of trippy visuals, even though those are PlayStation levels. But you are
mm,
giving me a lot of trippy visuals. But then
mm.
you are trying to bring in narrative contrivances such that he wouldn't kill, but you are designing those in such a way that like anybody would tell you अरे मार दे
Mm,
ना
Hmm.
wait क्यों
mm,
कर रहा है like your designing of the sequences is not working like when
mm,
he's sneaking around in the village and he sees the Claesbank character Fjolnir
Hmm.
torturing Olga somewhat and he's trying to take out his sword and everything you find that you are like he's coming out there is nobody there you could have killed him and just went
But
so when
there's
you
that's the conflict, na, because at that by that point he's already come across the Anya Taylor-Joy's character.
yeah, I
Hmm.
understand that's the conflict. My
Mm,
point being that first of all, तो Alexander Skarsgård का character doesn't have any sort of interiority or anything beyond like उसका
mm,
character का designing ही ऐसा है and he was told to act that way कि
Yeah, he's
you
like
are
an
going to be
animal.
one note.
Like
You are
he's
going to be one note.
brutish, whatever
Yeah.
he is, and then he sort of the idea is that he softens a little bit, I suppose.
mm,
You know?
He softens just a tad bit.
Yeah.
क्योंकि वो Viking का ही बात
वो
है. Again, it's
Olga softens
yeah.
him a little bit, whatever that
mm,
means.
Again this entire story of revenge angle like Northman does it. I think quote unquote anime did it rather
mm.
better than this, which is called the Vinland Saga. If
Okay.
anybody
Mm.
hasn't seen the Vinland Saga, I would highly recommend you. Since Aryan loves the Northman, I would highly recommend you to watch Vinland Saga. It's on
I don't
Netflix.
love it, but
Like
yeah, I will.
relatively you love it. यहाँ पे तो बहुत ही
Yeah, of course.
the
Yeah,
spectrum
no,
is
I
from
think I would
dislike to
recommend you to
like
watch
love.
the
Sorry.
Vinland Saga. I would
Mm,
recommend you to watch the Vinland Saga because the Vinland Saga also does the same thing. Like
Hmm.
Thorfinn's character is very much like extremely brutish, right?
Mm-hmm.
He becomes an animal, so like obsessed with revenge he is.
Mm-hmm.
ठीक है, but as he goes through these acts of violence, he slowly starts to realize what his father had told him about,
Mm-hmm.
war itself and how war kills you and how war hollows you out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm,
you're doing it slowly, but I know that filmmakers and storytellers like Eggers can utilize these ways because Lighthouse and The Witch has shown that he could introduce
Yeah.
character progression and character development very seamlessly within a limited runtime. So he could have done that. I'm just saying that there is a problem with being so faithful to the adaptation angle of it all. ठीक है ना?
mm,
Like
So this
you
is
are
the
being
one
faithful
time
to
then,
Amleth.
right?
Yeah, you are being
Considering he's
you are being faithful to the Amleth adaptation.
yeah.
थोड़ा
mm.
Hamlet डाल देते क्या होता? I'm
नहीं
just
नहीं
saying.
मेरा तो so I told you I'm happy to skip over the Northman का discussion because firstly I might just be one of those people who doesn't but I don't want to say this because I'm pretty sure there's other examples where I do like this sort of movie, but my thing was I wish I had like my PlayStation remote control in my hand so that I could skip over all the cutscenes.
Like
To
it's
me it
also
was
like
that.
it's almost like uh the Natric game, which is basically like football,
Hmm.
in which they use the ball and then they blast through people's heads and everything.
Hmm.
I'm like, I can understand you're keeping the sequence, but why? You don't need
Bloat
to.
तो है ही 2 hours 70 minutes पे it's not a short film I think at all
Yeah, you
by
don't
any
need
stretch of
to.
the imagination. So
If you're doing a revenge movie and if your entire point is he's going to torture people, get to the torturing a bit quicker, please. Thank you.
no, and for
Hmm.
me, I would say, as you said, I mean, I'm worried about Nosferatu like a lot now. But if you think
Me
that,
too, by the way.
but relative to this, because I think one of the bigger issues, I love Blashki's sort of compositions, but there's a bulkiness to the camera movement here, which I think sort of
Hmm.
butts against sort of the crazed mania of this character. To me,
Hmm.
it's
I
too
don't
like
mind it though. I don't mind it though. I felt like
I
those
just
some
felt
of those
that
long takes of the
they
violence
are well
actually.
crafted. I
Yeah,
just don't think they had like a visceral impact on me. I was like, okay, I'm glad that I can see the action. One of the big problems nowadays is you can't see
yeah.
the action. So it's
The last ending sword fight is like a
ending is
proper
very good,
long,
but
long
it's
take,
it
right?
Ending
reminds
is
me of
really,
Revenge of
really
the
damn good.
Sith.
Yeah.
By yeah, it's
Oh
literally
yes,
set
yeah,
in that
I
same.
got that.
एगर से लूकस तक मत जाओ प्लीज.
वो
I'm
पिक्चर तो
sorry.
अच्छी है रिवेंज ऑफ
हाँ
द सिथ तो ठीक
पिक्चर
है.
अच्छी. I'm just
Hmm.
saying.
Hmm.
I'm just saying.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
saying
but
that the setting
what
reminded
do
me.
you think? What do both of you think? Like him venturing into this studio territory, I had some hopes
I do
back when the
like. I
Northman
again
came
do
out
like.
because
एक
yeah,
second. एक second. I do
yeah,
like the fact that even for a studio movie, it felt very much like a Robert Eggers movie.
Yeah,
That
that
was
is
good.
very true. Like it
mm,
doesn't skimp around that fact. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like कि his vision has been compromised. उसी की है. I would say
yeah.
it reminded me a bit
Compromise
of,
तो है, but उसी की है.
but
That's what I'm
I mean
saying.
I think
compromised. It
that's what
reminded
I'm
me of
asking.
experience
Do you
with
guys
Dune,
think?
first Dune. To
Oh,
me,
oh
I
yeah,
had that
right,
Oh
right.
same
yeah.
sort of reaction to it, where I was just like, do I really have to
Mm.
go through this world to I
I
mean
think
this has this
when
whole
you
thing.
that's the same conversation
Hmm.
that are
I
you
watched this
as a
in the cinema
director, as a
first time. Sorry,
filmmaker
just asterisks. Uh, yeah.
And
in
you fell
Dubai,
asleep.
right?
I
Yeah,
didn't
right,
fall
right, right.
asleep. No. I watched it in New York.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. No, but I do think that like it's the same conversation that people, filmmakers, storytellers who are massive fans of a particular adaptation of a particular story, are they the ideal choices to adapt that on a
Like
big screen?
the
I
fidelity of
think,
adaptation, sort of
yeah,
like that. But we've praised him for that
exactly, yeah.
actually
No,
in
no, but
Lighthouse
again,
and
yeah,
that.
exactly.
No?
No, but it's not like it's not even like that. Again, it's very strange.
Hmm.
It depends on what you are trying to adapt and what you
Hmm.
think is necessary according to you, which should be put in the adaptation.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I know that one of the reasons one of our co-hosts Sanjeet likes the Northman is because of quote unquote the detailing
I
within
Hmm.
mean,
these movies.
I don't mind the detailing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think the detailing actually adds to the bloat at times,
Yeah. No, I think the
which is a
narrative,
major problem.
like to me, the narrative work is just like either underdeveloped or either flimsy. Like, to me, like the relationships between the
सर है
characters,
नहीं ना कुछ, वही तो प्रॉब्लम है नहीं ना कुछ इसमें.
like I would have much rather, there's this whole thing, like it's
Why do you
introduced
think
as
एक सेकेंड, why do you
Hmm.
think that Shakespeare का Hamlet is actually so popular?
because of
Because
the,
he recontextualized it. He first of
yeah,
all
Hmm.
shifted it and then he recontextualized it.
yeah.
He focused on the entire quote unquote Oedipal angle, the
I was about
relationship
to
between
say,
him and
like
his mother.
Aryan said, I to couldn't stop thinking about Heather,
Hmm.
like in many
Heather, right?
sequences.
Yeah.
I was just
Sir,
like,
because that's the whole point, na?
no,
Especially
no,
the
in
once
the sense
once
that I wanted that emotional weight of that film to hit me. Like, I want the one scene you're mentioning with Nicole Kidman's good,
That's
and I
what
think
I'm. That Nicole Kidman, the moment she enters UR, it's inevitable to think of Heather in terms of how.
Tabu and
But
So
ag-
you needed her more, na?
but
Instead of
that's
yeah.
my entire point. If you are
hmm,
retelling or remaking a story that everyone in culture already knows by heart. Okay,
Hmm.
everyone knows the tropes and everything. If you're not owning to your changes and tweaks, if
Hmm.
you're not adding new elements and making them, exploring them, having room
Hmm.
enough to explore them,
And you like
then
the
you're just
Northman
playing it
because
too
though
safe.
you felt he was
Because
successful somewhat in the Northman.
because he didn't even try to. I
Okay,
don't
like
think
he
it's about
Right,
the
stuck to
right, right.
just
psychosexual,
recreating. He
He
didn't
stuck
psychosexual.
try
to
his
just
own thing.
retelling
Yeah, yeah.
Hamlet. Yeah, yeah,
It
I
is a
understand.
So
very
I
earnest
think that's
retelling
the
of
other thing.
the
Maybe.
revenge story, about
Ha
the
ha ha.
Yeah,
violent
yeah.
part of it. Whereas
Interesting.
Nosferatu, he wants to.
To
It
revise
it
it.
starts and ends in a way,
Hmm.
without spoiling. It
Hmm.
starts and ends in a way where it is very much a story about lust and desire.
Hmm.
But what
Right.
about the middle portion where
Where they're
you
not
are
there.
in the middle portion, you are basically, that's the only time where you're like, no, I love the 1922 original film.
Ah,
Let's
okay.
make it all
Ah,
vibes.
okay,
Let
understood.
Willem
This
Dafoe
has
is
me
great in
so worried
Nosferatu,
about
but
this
I'm
film.
now very worried. I'm
Nosferatu,
sorry. This is
I
not
had
sounding
people.
good at all.
I watched it on 35. Okay, I had a blast, but
Hmm.
there were points where Willem Dafoe's
Dylan
character would
before.
say, where
Achha,
Willem
so
Dafoe's
Willem Dafoe's
character would
character
say something.
is essentially
The
playing
doc,
the
doc,
Renfield, right? Renfield
yeah,
to
yeah,
Dracula in a
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
understood.
okay.
No, 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 no. He plays the doc. I'll look up his name. Vaughn, Ebert Vaughn.
Oh,
He plays
understood,
the doctor.
understood, understood.
He
Okay,
plays,
okay.
but there were so many points. It gets so playful with its tone in the middle portion. I'm not even kidding. This was actually disappointing. I had people in my auditorium on the opening weekend. Okay,
Hmm.
Okay.
they were laughing and chuckling at moments that weren't supposed to be fun, just
Really?
because it
Okay.
was Willem Dafoe doing his quirky Willem Dafoe in an Eggers film thing.
Oh,
Oh,
And I'm sorry. Like, I still loved watching, but no.
amazing.
It also might be
sir,
the same reason, because
Americans.
I've watched the Oracle Nosferatu for the first time in the same auditorium for the first time in my life, like just 4 months
Are
back.
you sure he's
It might
not
be
being
because
intentionally funny in those sequences with Willem Dafoe?
no,
No? Okay.
no.
Okay. Interesting.
In a couple of moments, it is very intentionally funny,
Hmm.
but I had people in my auditorium who were constantly like
पर
laughing
वो
and
तो
chuckling
सर वो
Sir,
तो
every
वो
time
तो
he was laughing.
बहुत होता ही
Americans.
है नहीं
वो
नहीं
तो
it's not
Americans.
Americans नहीं it's
And
just
I'm not
general
even
audiences
saying
I feel
everyone came, like everyone was in the spirits. Like it wasn't even one of the special screenings, and people were like dressed in like gothic attires and
oh
all.
so
It
they were
was
like
it was a fun,
fans okay
yeah, yeah. And I
okay
mean,
Sir,
clearly, it's a
these are not
testament to
quote
how good
unquote
the movies
fans.
do.
These are the people who realize, oh, we can do theatrical experience after watching Barbenheimer. These are
हाँ
those
मतलब,
guys.
but people were like, there's a reason why it's doing so well at the box office. People want to see
yeah,
these kind
well
of
there's
films.
another
Like,
reason why it's doing well at the box office because it's known property if you
oh
want to
yeah,
be that
IP,
sneaky with
सब
it
तो IP है.
yeah
it's a
I mean the
silent films,
Northman is
yeah,
the only film of his which hasn't done well right so
Yeah.
right.
because it's
And it was also like
Scandinavian
post-pandemic.
we are American
लेकिन अगर उसको एडवर्टाइज करते द स्टोरी विच इंस्पायर्ड हैमलेट द स्टोरी विच इंस्पायर्ड लायन किंग तब करता चूती है अमेरिकन्स बट
cynicism
एनीवे
देखो cynicism देखो anyways I think we've exhausted our
Which again,
time
by the way, I would like to point out कि
Hmm.
यहाँ पर there were some of those long takes and some of those brutal action sequences which actually helped me somewhat in
Sure.
punctuating those moments of utter, some moments of utter boredom for me at least.
Oh, I at that 1 hour 15 minute mark to 1 hour 35 minute mark, I thought I could stop it and just leave. Second rewatch. Pe. I was just like, why am I wasting my time at this? Like again, it's one of those films, right, where I have such little connection to it on any level that I was just like, really, I have to
Connection तो
go
है नहीं.
through this?
I genuinely again, even if I like the movie and I do like the movie, but
Hmm.
it's like that Olga and Amleth relationship कुछ है नहीं उसमें.
I
Both
thought
of
it was
them are
very like
flimsy.
patched up together in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
sort of yeah, and it's like it. I don't know. Just again, I'll play God of War. I think I'll stick to that.
क्या
And
कनेक्शन है.
है ना
क्या
नॉर्स
कनेक्शन.
मिथोलॉजी भी तो है वो
Greek है.
नहीं
हाँ वो
नॉर्स
तो
भी है
बहुत है. वो तो
Yeah.
है.
नॉर्स भी है इन द रीसेंट वन देयर इज
The new God of War, which are like the PlayStation 4 वाला God of War are
हाँ
all Norse
उसमें तो
mythology.
थॉर ओडिन
Just
सब है
God
ना
of
They're shifting
सब है,
from
वही
Greek to
Greek है बहुत.
Norse now.
हाँ, तो
They're
कहीं तो
shifting from
जाएंगे ना हाँ
हाँ.
सिर्फ ग्रीक में तो सबको मार दिया तो बचा क्या
अब नॉर्स में चले गए. नॉर्स
हाँ
पे
हाँ
अब गॉड ऑफ वॉर रैग्नारॉक है. फिर उसके बाद जाएंगे ईशियन में या कुछ में। ये तो Assassin's Creed का टेम्पलेट ही फॉलो कर रहे हैं ये लोग, तो कुछ ना कुछ तो
गेम तो
करेंगे।
अच्छे हैं सर, तो कुछ बोल नहीं सकते।
गेम अच्छे हैं, आई एम नॉट इवन
Ragnarok
डिनाइंग
I
दैट।
कंट्रोलर
haven't
मेरे
played.
पास है और मैं लोगों के सर फोड़ रहा हूँ, इट्स दैट सेटिस्फैक्शन यू गेट ऑफ
वही सोचो नॉर्थमैन
Except
दिखा रहा
watching the
है।
Northman जिसमें है
Yeah,
ही
yeah, you don't have the
controller.
controller though, no? And you have to watch all the
You have now,
portions where
you
people
can
are talking.
shut it
I
off
do
and
मैं
think
नहीं
I
करता
do
ना
think
सर।
I do think problem वही है ना, I do think problem वही है कि all those dream sequences are so video game
Oh.
cutscene like in depiction. I'm like ये
I
video
just,
game ही कर देते।
I think वो dream-like scenario
legacy.
maybe is something which he needs to let loose. Like I don't know if that's the correct way to put it. Like
I'm going to put a very blasphemous
Sir,
statement here.
don't
देखो,
talk about Nosferatu.
Nosferatu देखो, sir. Dream
Hopefully he lets
sequences,
loose.
jump scares, dream
Oh no
sequences,
no
सब,
no
सब.
no.
No, I'm going to put a very blasphemous statement
It's
for
not
from a
that bad.
filmmaker who I don't like. ठीक है, like about a film from a filmmaker I don't like, but Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok.
You don't
Uh,
like Thor Ragnarok?
I like Thor Ragnarok. I don't like Taika
Ragnarok
Waititi.
is...
I'm
Oh.
saying that
Oh.
Thor Ragnarok का जो sequence था in which Led Zeppelin का
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin's का
Yeah.
music
I
is
don't know why I said it
fully
like it's the
bursting.
blasphemous to not like Thor Ragnarok. You can not like it.
We
It's
are
just
letting
No, I like
ourselves
Thor
out.
Ragnarok. I'm just saying
I,
that
I
was the
enjoy
moment
it.
where he
but-
cut
You don't
loose.
like an MCU film, oh my god.
No,
Why
it's
are we
like
doing a
it's like that is
podcast?
the one time. It's like that is the one time YTT completely lets loose and goes
Yes.
pop art. When
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entire
Yeah.
sequence of Thor coming down and
Sir,
that
वो सब
entire
के लिए we
dropping
have
down.
Spider-Verse, no? तो ये सब की क्या जरूरत है now? It's one of
I
those
am
things.
just saying,
Yeah.
even that Thor version of Thor in the Marvel universe is essentially taken from Norse mythology only.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
you are
of
going
course.
to like
वो तो
remix mythology,
comics में
go
भी.
all out, na.
Mm-hmm. I mean, other version of Thor we have is Kenneth Branagh's angled, Dutch angle Thor,
Dutch.
whatever that
Dutch
is.
angle Thor.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think on that note,
And
we
then other
should.
versions of Thor, we have God of War ka Thor, which is like
He's the
that guy is
villain, no?
something. Yeah, that guy is something.
Yeah. Anyways, yes. If you want more thoughts on Norse mythology, please don't come to this podcast.
No,
You have
do
other
come. I have
options.
some thoughts.
Acha, okay, then
I will let
Amartya will
I
do
will
a
let
deep.
Dhruv. I will ensure that Dhruv studies up on Norse mythology and plays God of War more so that he can converse with me. कोई problem नहीं
Amartya
है.
will do a deep dive on Norse mythology then, whenever we do an episode on it. Anyways,
Which is never unless you pay a gajillion amount of money in our Patreon,
yes.
which we went to.
Yes,
Yes.
we haven't started it yet, but we have plans because Amartya
Yes.
has said such blasphemous things that we can only release it privately
Yes.
on Patreon. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode so much. I hope, even though we had some choice words to say about the Northman, that we were otherwise pretty like illuminating about Eggers' sensibility, Eggers' films, his style. And Aryan has done, I suppose, whatever one can do is puncture all the expectations that Amartya and me had for Nosferatu, which is
Nosferatu.
good, which is what Sanjeet says you should have, right? He's like,
Yeah.
don't have don't have expectations from anything. I'm like,
So you won't be disappointed.
Yeah,
Interesting. It almost mirrors one of the lines from his favorite movie, Spider-Man: No Way Home.
I don't really get excited about things. I kind of expect disappointment.
Because then you'll never actually be disappointed. Right?
Yeah, right.
But yes, you can follow Amartya at Amartya25 on Instagram, Aryan at Aryan Talks Film on Instagram, and myself at Terminal Cinema there. At queenisdead.film podcast is also
On Twitter.
On Twitter, and on Instagram. We will be getting back to posting our episode, doing posts on the episodes we release, which means I'll be spending one whole day on them. So please do look out for them and, like them,
Please
share them,
follow
subscribe them.
us and please listen to us so that Dhruv would not have to do so much. कुछ पैसे मिल जाए तो Dhruv will hire an intern to actually do all this for
Sir,
him.
I can still hire. We are just not hiring because I need something to do in my life. No.
अरे अगर क्वीनीज डेट की तरफ से पैसे आए तब you can hire from that money ना. You don't have to hire from your end.
Sure.
वही कह रहा
Got
हूँ.
it.
मुझे तो
Anyways.
पता है you can hire.
सबको पता है कि ना
Yeah.
credit to you guys. But anyways, yes, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Next week, Nosferatu, Aryan, if he joins, he will be delving more into
He
all
will
the
be puncturing our
disappointments.
expectations even more.
I am so like it's genuinely
If
gone down
if
the drain after this
if it
episode.
releases in India, which is a big if. I
मैं
just saw
तो
on
दुबई
Bookmyshow
में
the
हूँ सर,
runtime.
मैं तो जा रहा हूँ.
They're showing on the 10th, but the runtime is showing 2 hours 4 minutes, and I'm like, कहाँ
Oh,
गए 11-12 minute?
2 hour 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yikes! 10-12 मिनट निकाल दिए इन्होंने.
मैं नहीं देख रहा थिएटर में, आई एम
सर
सॉरी.
ये वैसे भी आर्यन
Hopefully
ने जैसे
from the
डिस्क्राइब
second
की
act.
है, आप वेट कर सकते हो
No,
इसके
it's
लिए, कोई
fun,
वो
man.
नहीं.
It's fun. It's fun.
सर आपने
But Dhruv,
क्राउड के
try
साथ
to watch
देखी
it.
थी,
Is
वो
it
वर
playing on?
इंटरेस्टेड.
सर कुछ ना कुछ
Is it playing
ऑल्टरनेटिव
on
निकाल के देख
film?
लूंगा मैं, वो बात नहीं
सर
है एपिसोड में
दुबई
देखने
है,
की.
आप
अरे
न्यूयॉर्क में रहकर ही ऐसी बातें कर सकते हो.
अरे Dubai has great theater.
सर एक तो थिएटर्स हैं, वो भी एक रेनोवेशन में आई मैक्स वाला. एनीवेज, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर लिसनिंग टू दिस एपिसोड एंड on the note of theaters not doing justice to us, खत्म.